Hello there. Welcome. It's a new day. It's a new week. We're going into the halfway week. This is week 6. How's everybody doing tonight? How was everyone's weekend? Hope everyone had a relaxing weekend. This is the first weekend in a long time that I had to I got a little bit of relaxation time. I had a lot of work to do, but it was chill work, nothing super pressing. I got to kind of just cool out. I got to hit the Baltimore car show, which was nice. They didn't really have a lot of cool cars there, to be honest. Looks like a lot of people left all their cool cars at home. They brought all the commuter stuff. They brought all the SUVs and vans and things that most consumers want. So I didn't get to see that many cool things. I did get to see the C8 Corvette. So I actually have a C8 Corvette on order. I'm not getting a C8 Corvette, but I wanted to see. As soon as they announced it, I was like, I'll have enough money by then to get a C8 Corvette, maybe. And so I have a place in line, and I've put in my order form. But I mean, someone else is going to get my build. One day I'll post what that build is. It's like white Z51 package with like a wing with like red seats, red calipers. It was just a dream. I thought maybe I would get lucky by now, but that's hasn't quite happened yet. But that was exciting. Oh, congrats, the Ego. You passed the CCNP. That's a big deal. For anyone who doesn't know about the different certifications there are out there, CCNA, CCNP. I think CCNA did it get tied into CCNP, or is that one before the CCNA? Either way, all of the Cisco certs are they're tough. So congratulations on that. That's dope. Definitely dope. Cashmere TV. We said to talk on AWS cloud service. That's awesome. So you're gonna learn tonight how big AWS is. Amazon Web Services is huge. It's a big deal. It really is a big deal. It's an extremely marketable skill. So many people need it. And the cloud itself is just the way cloud computing, I guess the concept of cloud computing has been really, really cool for individuals, for the smaller people. We can do a lot with it. So we'll learn about some of that tonight. But that's dope. Yeah. So what are we talking about tonight? We're gonna get started right at like 8:05 because we always go over on these. I will go up on this. And let's check out what we got here tonight and for the next couple of weeks. So tonight is our first night of the cloud concepts. So although we're using AWS, so these concepts will be. It's weird. I'll try to explain as we're going through them what is cloud, like cloud native, and the concepts that are common across the board in the cloud, and the things that are Amazon specific. The high level concepts are usually cloud specific, and as you dive deeper into each of them is usually provider specific, but I'll try to call that out. But tonight's you're gonna learn about what the cloud is. We're gonna learn a little bit about compute resources, like computing resources. Not everyone knows how a computer works, so we'll talk about that a little bit. Talk about what these resources are, and then we'll hop in to AWS. You've seen me be in the console before, but you may have had no context of what was going on. We're gonna start to put some context around that. Talk about what AWS is, what it's good for, why it exists. Talk about their service categories, and then we'll get hands-on with a few of their services. Amazon has, I believe, right under 200 services now, so they've grown pretty substantially. That all do different things. So we will hop into in this 4-part course. We're going to be covering the larger ones that people need to know, the kind of core services that you need to know. So we'll get on hands-on with EC2. We've done a bit with EC2. And then we'll get all in on IAM. IAM is actually a big thing that you should spend more time messing with, more time learning and understanding, because it is very, very, very important. AWS Educate to get my cloud computing 101. Yeah, so I saw the AWS Educate thing, and I actually think I'm going to sign up for it as well. I actually think I can get some resources from them for classes like this. Sorry, this is just my evening coffee. I try not to drink coffee too much, but I'm starting to work out early in the morning again. And by this time, I worked out pretty early this morning. By the time we get to this time, Usually I probably will be pretty drained after like a real work day, but since it was Sunday, got to relax and I'm not drained right now. There are various Linux, cloud, DevOps, sec stuff. Where to move next? Yeah, so the good thing about these tools, good thing about the cloud, good thing about learning automation, good thing about learning these concepts is you can move in and out. Like you can move it like, yeah, in the position that you're at now, you might be doing some DevSecOps stuff, and maybe you just want to go just be a DevOps engineer and don't have to worry about the security stuff. Maybe you just want to do security. Maybe you want to go do development for a certain amount of time. I mean, the concepts are kind of, they're shared across the board. And I actually think more of what DevOps is like kind of knowing cloud computing, knowing how applications work, how they're served, things like that. I actually think that's going to start to become what a full stack developer is. I actually think the title's going to expand. I think that a lot of the engineering roles are going to start to converge. To be 100% honest, people are going to expect you to know more and more, which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's going to be harder for people to get into it, but it'll be, it's good. It's definitely a good thing. I like the shared knowledge that is that's being pushed, but again, it does raise the barrier for entry just a little bit. Well, a lot actually. 176 of them. Yep, 176 services is what Amazon has. Thank you for that number. Cashmere TV, that sounds right to me. Yeah, just learned their analytics service. That's awesome. Their services are good. I mean, they make a service for whatever your needs are. They have a service for whatever your needs are, which is very interesting. So I think dev skills are going to be useful anywhere. That's true. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, a lot of these skills and stuff it's all just patterns, and it really is just patterns, and it's very similar logic. Like once you've got the concepts down, you can hop between technologies. I mean, you can solve all kinds of stuff because the patterns are pretty similar. And once your brain starts to pick up on those things, and you start to think the way that tech is kind of set up, it actually gets, I wouldn't call it easy, but it gets super approachable. Like I'm usually never worried about running into a huge problem that I can't solve. And I'm sure there are plenty of problems that I can't solve. I'm not saying I can solve every problem, but it's never something I'm worried about because, most of the stuff, the way all the stuff is set up is again, a pattern. You've seen it before in a different way with a different program. Yeah, cool. So let's go ahead and let's get started tonight. I do not think, did I put these in the slides in the classroom? I don't know if I fixed that. I had all the automation wrong. I'm not sure if I fixed it, but if not, I'll share them really quick. Don't sweat that. Okay, curriculum. We're on bootcamp DevOps tonight. Bootcamp deep dive. Gonna change the name of that. And what are we on? We are on Intro to the Cloud. That looks, I might have titled this one wrong. Okay, let's share it. Let's get you all this shareable link. Oops. Anyone with a link in view? Copied. Share. There we go. Jack of all trades, master of some/none equals DevOps. I think that's true. I think it's master of like one or two things. I think people going into DevOps now, you might not get that it might take you a long time to get that mastery of one thing. Like because I came from like strictly a Linux background. It's interesting because I'm not even the master of that anymore just because I don't do very much with it. But yeah, I do think that's true. Master of some or none. That kind of is that really is it. You can kind of solve problems in any category. Let's see. Master new your flex. Yep. Hey, it's all gravy. Okay, let's get moving. So we're not going until 12 o'clock because your boy got to go to sleep because I need to work out in the morning. I'm trying to get on a good schedule. I'm trying to figure out what schedule's best and switching it up, taking a very agile approach to these things, trying something, seeing how it works, seeing how it makes me feel, switching it up and trying it again. But all right, intro to the cloud. All the cloud is someone else's computer. The name is actually dumb, and you're about to learn that now. So what the heck is the cloud? Everyone's been talking about it for years. What is it? All the cloud is a distributed network of computing resources. So it's distributed, networked computing resources. We're going to talk about what resources are in a second, but it's just, we talked about distributed before. It is geographically distributed resources, both geographically and kind of service-wise, nodes per se, but they're distributed and not in the same place. They're not centralized into the same place or the same server. Yeah, and they're just networked together. They can all speak to each other. And then it's on-demand access without direct active management by the user. So on-demand, we all know on-demand is. Comcast, introduced on-demand videos to us, Netflix, things like that. Whenever you want it, you got it. In the cloud, you pay for what you use. So you're charged by what you do access, but you can get it whenever you want. And you don't have to manage those underlying resources. And we'll talk about what that means as well. So what's important to know is all the cloud is a bunch of network computers. Pretty simple. Number one, a bunch of network computers. And two, it gives you on-demand access to the resources that those network computers have available to them with no direct active management by the user. Cool. So back here, we talk about resources. What are resources? Because this is essentially what makes the cloud so great. Or yes, because you can just kind of piecemeal these resources. This is what is great. So it's important to know what you are trying to get. So what are the things that make a computer run? What are the resources that that make a computer be able to do what it does? And the first thing, the brain per se of the computer, is the CPU. This is your compute. And I put that in parentheses there because a lot of times it's going to come up as that the category of compute is going to come up. So CPU, what is a CPU? CPU stands for a central processing unit. Again, this is like the brain of your computer. It's also called a central processor or main processor. And all it really does, I'm not even going to read the whole definition there. You can read the whole thing there, but all it does is it's what does the number crunching. It's what it processes the data. So basically you feed it in a bunch of ones and zeros, it processes those things and spits you out some information as well. But the more powerful your processor, the more things the more data you can crunch, more numbers you can crunch, the more logic you can work through. But yeah, again, think about this like the brain. You don't need to know to understand the cloud and to be great at the cloud. You don't need to get super deep on this. You just kind of need to know that CPU, when you need to process things, when you need to crunch some numbers, CPU is what you're going to be using to do that. And a little star by that, but that's what you're going to be using for right now. Next thing is RAM. And so everything that we're talking about here, this is not cloud specific. This is how your computer runs. This is how your phone runs. Like, this is how computers currently work in the world. So the next thing is RAM. This is your random access memory. So random access memory, this is not the memory that you use to save things to your computer. When you save a file, on your computer, if you're working in Microsoft Word or whatever, RAM is not where it goes. It's memory, but it's volatile memory. It's flash memory. So what it is it's very fast memory that's used to store working data or machine code. It allows items to be read or written in almost the same amount of time. So it's very, very fast memory. It's a lot smaller than your hard drive space. And again, it's volatile. If you cut your computer off, it's not persistent. So if you cut your computer off, everything that's in that memory goes away. Yes, nothing will get saved there. Nothing permanently gets saved there. It's for very quick access. And it helps the more RAM you have, if you're processing a lot of things, the better it can run, because you can usually store some data there very quickly to be able to grab very quickly. That's what RAM is. Hard drive. So random access memory is your volatile storage. It's not persistent. This is the storage that is persistent. Hard drive. This stores data persistently. So this is, when you do want to save a file, this is where your file system lies. This is where, where Windows is installed, where Mac is installed, where Linux is installed. This is where, your directories and folders and your pictures and images, all that stuff gets saved here on your hard drive. I'm sure we've had issues where we run out of space on our computer, this is also a resource that is in the cloud. There's a bunch of different types of storage. There's a bunch of storage options you'll see when we get to the cloud. Some of the common ones are magnetic storage, which looks like this. This is probably what you think of if you already kind of have an idea what a hard drive is. And this is kind of one of the slowest forms of memory now. We have things called solid state drives now, which actually operate a little more like RAM does actually. It's a lot faster because it's not using this magnetic spinning disk, but it is in fact a hard drive. And again, these are all things you can learn about. You don't need to know right now the differences between hard drive types yet. You don't need to know, you just need to know that hard drives is where the persistent storage lies. What's up, Adaday? Thank you for the follow. Welcome to the channel. All right, next piece is a video card. Every computer actually doesn't have this. If you have some type of Ultrabook, your 13-inch MacBooks, things like that, actually do not have a dedicated video card. They actually use this. The CPU actually handles video for most of those things. But a video card, it is a dedicated processor for graphics processing. So the video card provides the images seen on the monitor. The video card is attached to a monitor using a VGA cable. Obviously, I grabbed this right off of Wikipedia. That's mostly not true nowadays. VGA cables are pretty antiquated at this point. You're probably going to be using something like HDMI. Some video cards have 2 monitor connections, but yeah, this is kind of what a consumer video card looks like. Actually, what most video cards look like that you might stick into your computer if you wanted to upgrade your desktop or something like that. Obviously, it wouldn't look like this in your laptop, but again, this is used for a different type of processing, and there's a lot of information out there about these things. These are also used heavily because of the way that they process data. You probably heard a lot of people doing Bitcoin mining and things like that. The way that GPUs process data is better for things like that. So a lot of people actually, mine this cryptocurrency and stuff using GPU processing units. But yeah, it's good. GPUs are becoming good for a lot more nowadays. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. Machine learning. And training data sets and stuff, the GPU can be heavily used to do these things as well. So video card is just another kind of another processor on the side of your GPU that focuses on the graphical data usually. All right, so those are kind of the main computing resources that you'll usually have to. Everything kind of falls in those categories with basically, or every service category has some allocation of resources like that you have to take care of, or that you have to know about to know how to use that service properly. And then the other category of the way the services are broken down is by functionality. But we're gonna hop into that as well. But it's just important to kind of run through and know those things. So what are your cloud computing vendors? So we're gonna be talking about AWS, but what are the other options that you have? And vendors is just someone who kind of sells the service. So right here on the left, we have Microsoft Azure. Right here, we have AWS, which is Amazon Web Services. So obviously this is Microsoft's cloud product, AWS, Amazon Web Services, which is Amazon's cloud product. And you have GCP down here, which is Google Cloud Platform, which is Google's cloud service. There are many other clouds. There's the Alibaba cloud. There's, even things like DigitalOcean and Linode and stuff. Yeah, you can get VPSs and things off of there, but they also provide cloud services as well. You can rent certain resources, no problem. But there are a bunch of clouds out there. These are the 3 big ones. These are the ones that jobs will probably want you to be familiar with, almost guaranteed. So why are we choosing AWS? If we have a bunch of different options, what is the reason we're choosing AWS? Let's find out. So, and this is actually a bit old. You can see this from a couple of years ago. It still very much looks like this. I think Microsoft is gaining some ground, but it still very much looks like this. This is worldwide market share. So this is a very interesting graph. Take a look at it. Amazon all the way up here back in 2018 for worldwide market share. Microsoft, which is the second largest, is less than half of their market share, is less than half of Amazon's market share. Why is that? Number of reasons, mostly because Amazon started first. This Amazon pushed their cloud product, first brought it to the public first, the general public first. And so Microsoft, saw what this was, and I'm sure they were, working on offerings and things. There's a race for all this stuff, and they were able to capture a lot of the market. And Google definitely bringing up the rear, but even though it's bringing up the rear, but it is still the third largest cloud provider here. You can see IBM was bigger, but Google started taking some of their market share here. Alibaba, if you're not familiar with Alibaba, they're like Amazon, but like not in the US. But you can order from them and, order products from them, and they have a cloud as well. And then you can see here that the next 10 providers combined were about the same market share as Microsoft. And so that's 10 different providers. And then there's the rest of the market. Why are there so many providers? Because there's a ton of money. There's a ton of money in this, that there is to be made. These companies are still making money. I can almost guarantee it. But that's kind of how the market is breaking down. And again, the reason we're using Amazon is because of their market share advantage. And because they have a market share advantage, the amount of jobs that are open for people who need to know Amazon Web Services is astronomical. There's so many of them. There's so many. I almost never they'll mention Microsoft Azure in their posts because, again, when you understand cloud concepts, you can you can move in between the clouds. Like, you won't be super proficient in each individual service, but you'll be able to understand the concepts. You'll be able to create reliable infrastructure to service your clients. But I don't see many postings with Azure, to be 100% honest. I see more with GCP, with Google Cloud Platform, than I see with Azure, like specifically calling out GCP. But Amazon's by far what you're going to, what I would recommend diving into first. But you can definitely carve out a niche with one of these two. I know when I first joined Fearless, like a year in, I think we had a project where they really wanted to do a lot of stuff with Azure, and it took us, we had a hell of a time trying to find someone who had good enough Azure skills, just because, again, at the time, it wasn't something that people were asking for a lot. And there was one we're asking for a lot. So a lot of people in the area, at least in the area where I am, did not have that knowledge. But definitely, yes. So Azure definitely is not. Azure is big. There are lots of jobs for Azure. It is not the same as it was, 3 years ago. It's definitely picked up more of the market. So also, something that I think is valuable, just looking at just cloud engineer. So again, remember I said you could get a job if you just learned, one or two of these topics. We're going through all these different concepts. If you learn just one or two, you can get a job. So there are cloud engineer positions. There are a lot of cloud engineer positions. Usually these are infrastructure engineering positions where you're developing infrastructure. You're doing a lot. Like it's DevOps adjacent. You'll be using a lot of the tooling. You'll be implementing some of the automation, but you'll be focused on purely on creating that infrastructure rather than working on these build pipelines and other things. You'll be really a sysadmin who's proficient with wrangling the cloud. But yes, you can absolutely do that. And this was the average salary when I looked it up, September 7th, 2019. Maybe it's changed, but you can see here it is a valuable thing for sure. So that is all we're going to do with the slides. It was just to give you a quick intro onto kind of what the cloud is, give you a little overview of the resources, but we're going to hop right into Amazon. So you've seen me sign into Amazon before. Feel free to sign up for an Amazon Web Services account. I encourage it. It's free to sign up. It will make you put in a credit card, unfortunately. But again, it's because you pay for what you use. Again, they have free tiers for almost every service so that you can learn, so that you can practice, and so that you can just use it. But you do need to put a credit card in to sign up. I'm pretty sure maybe there's a way around it, but as far from what I remember, you do need a credit card to do that. So take some time. Set up an account if you can, if you want to. And you know what? This is not good. I left my phone in the car. I can get in. Having problems It'll send me an email or something. Let's see. Let's do this. Send verification. I'll grab it on this screen. That's good. I'm glad they give you some other options. So basically what's happening here is I have two-factor authentication set up on my account, and I use my phone as the second factor. So two-factor authentication, for anyone who doesn't know, is basically you need two authentication devices to be able to get in. So password being one, and then a second factor. So the second factor could be a hardware token. So there's things called YubiKeys. What's up, Sweeku? Welcome to the channel. Thanks for the follow. But you could use something like a YubiKey, which is like an actual hardware token. You would plug into your USB port and you hit a button on it, and it would say, cool, I've got both things that I need. I'll sign you in. The other more common way is to use a virtual token, which is something like your phone. You probably use this with some other types of applications, maybe banking or something. And what it does is it sends you an address. I mean, it sends you a code. Basically, it changes every like 30 seconds or something. And what you can do is actually, let me stop showing my screen for a second. But you use that code to be able to log in, but it can send you an email as well. That's fine. You can see that. You guys can see my invoices and all the stuff. Look at that. You guys are getting a view of everything. That's fine. I really don't care. I just don't want you to see. I mean, I don't think you can do anything with it, but I've learned my lesson before. So let me go ahead and get logged in here. AWS verification, verify your address. It wants to call me. Call me now. That doesn't help me. It might help me in a second. Hold on. Part 1 of 4. Yes, part 1 of 4. Hold on. Let's see really quick. I can, if I click call me now, is it gonna let me put in, I thought it was gonna let me put in a phone number. Give me a second. Let me figure out what to do here because I do not have my phone. I can sign up with a different account. Actually, I have you know what? That's what we'll do. Let's put this back here just so we can go through man, that sucks. This will be the day that I did that. So I could get my phone, but I might have left my phone at home. But this is not a big deal. This is, you know what? I actually have something. Nope. I need two-factor auth for that as well. Let's see here. Let's see. I know what I can do. All right, let's sign in with a different account. Let's actually just create one. I'll create one with my personal email. No problem. So you just sign up here. That's super whack. How long have I been coding for? Like in my lifetime or tonight? We started the stream at 8. We just went over some slides. I've been coding for maybe 5 or 6 years. Been doing like system stuff for longer than that, but yeah, I've been coding for about 5 years. So you guys can know my personal, I don't care. My personal email address. You guys have been doing good at not blowing up my mastermind email account. Gmail.com. Password. I'm not going to use the suggested because you guys can see the suggested. And because this will be a personal account, no big deal. Keep that super simple. And account name, I don't care. 321. So this is how you create an Amazon account. Great. And click continue. Oh, account with this email address already exists. Well, I'll see if we can sign in. I wonder if it's this account. Let's try that again. So what if I do? Oh, look at that. So I don't have two-factor auth on my personal account. This is interesting. Cool. Well, we're good to go. That's great. Yeah, no, LastPass is great for exactly that. I have no idea what I have in this account. This is exciting, actually. We're in Oregon over here. All right, so let's talk about what this is. So this is the Amazon Web Services console. It is one of the worst user experiences I've ever seen for something with this many, for something that has this many options. I'm not sure I've ever seen it more a more poor implementation of how you use it. Each of the services has an inconsistent feel and usage. It's really like, it's very annoying. It's very frustrating. So it's a problem. In the beginning, you will have to use you will be using the console most of the time. There's another way to interact with Amazon, and a better way that I prefer to use to do that. But we're starting here. You can interact with it programmatically, but we're going to start here. This is what you get, and it looks better. It looks decent. The looks are fine. The UI is fine. The UX is not. So the user experience isn't, the user interface design is fine, I guess. But cool. You log in. This is what you're brought to. Stephen Yeat, you worked on this UI. I'm sorry to say that. I'm not saying you did a bad job. I'm saying that it wasn't, it's just too big of a product, and it could have been thought out a little bit better, because again, they're all different. What's up, P Ting? Are you Paul? Is that you? If it is, welcome to the stream. Also, how you doing? If it is Paul, how you doing, man? Been a while. So this is the console. This is what you get brought into, and this is where you can manage everything that you have, all of your resources, all your services. So remember, we said Amazon had, I think someone put in there 176 services. Someone brought the number up. I said right under 200. I don't know. But when you click services, you get hit with all of them. And so that's fair. That's fair. Maybe they could just give you the categories collapse or something. But I think this is fine. But what you'll learn to do is to use the search bar to search for the service you need and hop in that way. There is this history thing is really nice here. So it'll keep your 5 or 6 most recent that you've been hitting. And that's probably what you'll need to use if you're in the console. But yeah, so that's what you'll get. Right out of the box. There's also a few other, there's a settings and a billing dashboard page, all kinds of other stuff, but this is what you get right out of the box. And so when you log in, you don't have really anything and you don't know where to go. So there's no maybe if this was my first time logging in, maybe it would have given me a getting started or something. So if it does, let me know. But you can see how intimidating this might be, logging in and it doesn't give you, doesn't tell you what to do. And you're I don't, this is just a bunch of crap here. Doesn't tell you what any of the services actually are. Well, let's take a look at these services and look at how they're broken down. Remember, I said compute, and all these things here, you can see how there's all these services. We talked about compute being one thing, things that, focused on the CPU, focused on the central processing unit, but there's a bunch of services inside this one thing, and they all serve different purposes. But really, the resource that you're really renting, or that they're really focusing on here, is compute. Most of these also get other services added on as well, other resources and things added on as well. But again, these are your compute services. You can see here, there's things for storage. So you got some options here for storage. Some things in here for databases. So databases are pretty important. So you got those options. Migration and transfer. So how do you get to the cloud, or how do you move data in and out of the cloud? How do you move all your stuff into the cloud? They want people to be able to migrate to Amazon Web Services. So that's a category as well. Networking and content delivery. I think we talked about a CDN, maybe not. But yeah, networking, very important. The cloud actually makes networking a lot easier than networking really is. But it's really nice here. So, networking matters. Developer tools. So Amazon has its own full pipeline that you can set up. It has its own GitHub repository. So I think we didn't do Git here yet. We did Git on the Python course, but you do have, it has all the developer tools here. You can store your code here. You can build it here. You can use it to deploy here. You can also develop your code here. So there's Cloud9. Actually, I'll spin up a Cloud9 instance. I'll do it in a second. But you can have an IDE here. So if you want to develop things, if you want to develop any kind of application, they have a cloud web-based IDE here. If you ever used Cloud9, it was a product before this. They purchased them and integrated it within AWS. It is, I don't love it, but it is useful. It can be very, very useful. It is like VS Code. It is VS Code in the, basically it's not doesn't have as many plugins as VS Code, but it is a solid editor that is in the browser. So that's pretty cool. But again, you have all these other things, machine learning. So if you want to work on machine learning stuff, you have all that stuff, and management and governance. And so you have a lot of stuff here. You have a lot of categories with a lot of things inside of them. So this is the first part that's overwhelming. This is why, this is the first piece of why, like when you go to a job rec or something, it just lists off all these, it just lists off a bunch of services. Hey, we want you to have EC2 and RDS and SQS and S3. And you're like, bro, what does that mean? And so we're gonna start going over some of the core services. It's on like, it's not that hard to pick up these services. You do not need to know what every service does or what it is. Like I don't know what a majority of services are, to be honest with you. Well, I won't say a majority, but there's a lot on here that I don't know what they do. I can make a guess at them just because I've used Amazon a lot. But yeah, let's start going through some of those things. Actually, let me make sure I hit what we need to do. Cool. So that's a little bit overview of the service categories. These are just log in, take a look at them. You don't need to memorize what's in them right now at all. Just know that there are a bunch of them and they all serve different things, and you can choose the one that works for what you need, for the problem that you need to solve. So you're going to use these tools. Amazon provides you a bunch of tools, a bunch of services so that you can solve problems with them and you can create solutions using them. So now the first service that we're going to dive into, and we're actually getting hands-on right now, and you see me spin up some stuff, but this is good because this is a new account with nothing in it. We're going to spin up some services. We're going to start utilizing the cloud. And again, this does, you can follow along with this. There is a free tier for specifically this. So the first service that we're going to go into is like, this is not their first service. This is probably their biggest service though. Like EC2. Well, S3 is probably a little bit bigger, but EC2 stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. So that, their naming convention, this is where Azure, Microsoft has them beat with naming. Microsoft keeps it very simple. Microsoft calls their servers, their servers that you can rent, they just call them, I think they call them Azure virtual machines because it makes sense. They are virtual machines that you are renting from them. This is essentially the same thing. This is a virtual machine. Remember, we set up some virtual machines earlier. This is essentially your de facto server. When you think of a hosting provider, when you want to just grab a server, this is what you would do. So what's interesting about EC2 and why is EC2 in the compute section? We know that a server is basically a computer and it has all those resources. And again, this is mostly because the focus here is compute, and really the way that it's sectioned off and it's built, and the way that it's you're charged, and your instance sizes and things are generally heavily dependent upon the CPU first, and then there are some categories inside of that which shake that up a fair amount. But yes, that is all an EC2 instance is a virtual machine, and again, each one of them is called an instance, so you'll hear that a lot. So that nomenclature is important. So EC2 stands for Elastic Compute Cloud, and these are your virtual machines here. So we can launch an instance. So this will have Amazon, this will basically give Amazon a request that will set up a virtual machine with the specifications that we provide. We have options over that. We can tell it how much compute capacity we need. You know, if we need to do a lot of number crunching, we can do a lot of number crunching. If we want to have something that has a lot of memory, we can have something that has a lot of memory. If we need tons of disk space because we're going to be saving a lot of files, we can add in however much disk space we have. Again, it is on demand. Remember, on demand, just like Comcast, just like Netflix, it's on demand. When you want it, you get it, and you pay for exactly what you use. So let's start with that. So let's launch one really quick. And we'll get to this first screen. So let's break down what's happening here. It's saying choose an Amazon machine image or an AMI. Please, well, okay. Don't call them AMIs. try not to call. It bothers me personally, and a lot of people I've heard it bothers when people call them AMIs or AMIs. Please call them AMIs. I don't know why it bothers me so much, but it's like the one service thing that really does bother me. But they're AMIs. They're Amazon Machine Images. Yeah, a lot of people call them AMIs. I'm out on that. I can't. It's not for me. I can't do it. So Amazon provides you with a number of machine images. So what is a machine image? It is simply an image. It is a base operating system basically for your virtual machine to be built off. When we built our virtual machines, I think we downloaded Pop! OS and we installed that into VirtualBox. We used that ISO file to install that into VirtualBox. This is going to be the base operating system that your server is going to be brought up on. And so you have a lot of options here. You have, again, distributions like Amazon has their own Linux that's kind of optimized for what they think you would need to do. So Amazon Linux is good. You have Red Hat. So, Red Hat, CentOS, things like that. You have Red Hat here. You have SUSE. You have Ubuntu here. And these are ones that Amazon provides to you. So this is great. You can use one of these. You can also do Windows servers. All good. So this is like the operating system of your computer. But you can also build your own AMIs. So you can use various tools for this. Packer is probably the biggest one. We'll do some stuff with Packer. You can build your own AMI. And you can put it on here for so that you can use it. This is a common thing. Most companies build their own AMIs. So we may start with base Ubuntu or something, and if there are specific packages, if there are specific security concerns, certain setups that we need, you can basically create an image that has all these things enabled for you already. So then when you spin up a new server, when you spin up a new EC2 instance, it will have all the things already available that you need. You don't need to go in and, manually install, or you don't need to copy in that script that we wrote in the Checkpoint Lab to be able to, set up web servers and stuff. You can have those things available to you out of the gate. So you can create your own. But you can also go to the AWS Marketplace, which is a place where people put AMIs here for specific purposes, and you can use them. Some of them cost money, extra money. Some of them are free, but you can use these things to base your server off of. So by default, we're just going to go ahead and use one of theirs. Again, we've been using Ubuntu heavily for this whole course, so we're going to stick with it just so we're comfortable. I don't want people to get super confused if we use the Amazon Linux and you see me type in a different command, because that one's actually based off of Red Hat and CentOS. So we'll just use this. Now, next screen. So first screen is your base image. So we're going to start from the very beginning and talk about the operating system that your thing's built on. So you choose that first. Then you choose an instance type. So this is going to be instance type is going to be what your server, what your EC2 instance kind of excels at. It's going to be what the strengths are going to be. So there's some options here, and it takes a little while to learn all of the things that we have here. It gives you a family over here, but this is going to be what you're going to end up like if you're trying to take the exams. You're going to have to know these service categories. You see T2 micro. So T2 is like the class of the server, and nano is like the size. So nano is like the smallest. So T2 nano is like the smallest of this category. Micro, again, a little bit bigger than nano. And you can see here they correlate to different amounts of other resources. So memory, a nano gets half a gig of memory, micro gets 1, small gets 2, medium gets 4, large gets 8, extra large gets 16. And so you have these various general purpose ones that again are all good for different things. Some of them have excel in the amount of CPU that you get. Some of them excel in the amount of memory that you get. Some of them excel, at IOPS and throughput of your disks. So it takes a while to learn what each of these categories is for. There are ones that are good for graphics processing. There are ones that you can, they have field programmable gate arrays where you can kind of program you can reprogram your gate arrays. Go look at that. I had a hell of a time learning about that when I was studying for the exam I initially took. But there are a lot of options here. Check those things out. Right now, we're going to use the ones that say free tier eligible. So we're going to use this T2 Micro right here. It's going to give us one virtual CPU and 1 gig of memory. Don't worry about all of the other storage types and stuff. We're just going to use this one for now. We'll get there. We'll talk about that stuff because it can be a lot. I chose Ubuntu. I can go back. I just chose scroll down a little bit, and I chose the Ubuntu server 1804. It's like the 5th server on the list. So head on down there and select that one. Micro, we'll choose that because it's free tier eligible. Now, every service in Amazon has a different usage requirement for the free tier that it offers. The free tier for EC2 is 750 hours, and you can find this out. You just Google like AWS EC2. It's 750 hours. I believe that's what it was of free usage. That's what the free tier was. But those hours can be confusing. You don't get any server that you spin up as a T2 Micro is free for 750 hours. It's a total allotment for the year. And so if you're running, one server, and it's not going to run for 750 hours, you're fine. But if you're running something that's going to run out, if you're going to run it for 750 hours, if you got a second server, now each of those servers counts towards those hours. So now you have half of that amount of time. You have half of 7. You can run both servers for half of 750 hours. And the more you add, all eat away at your hours. So it can be pretty interesting. The good thing is those times are only calculated if your servers are up and running. You can tear these things down. So again, we said they're on demand. So you don't need to think about them as these permanent items all the time. You can spin things up to try them and practice and work with them. And then when you're done with them, you can destroy them, shut them down. You can create an AMI based off of them and use it the next day or whatever, but you don't have to leave them running. So we're going to choose Micro. Then we get some instance details. I could spin up as many of these as I want. I could spin up 56. Well, there are not as many as I want. Amazon does have something called service limits. Each of these services by default allows you a certain amount of whatever it is. And I don't know what the EC2 service limit is offhand. Not a big deal. You can just Google EC2 service limit if you want to check that out. Right now, we are simply going to use one. We want one instance of this. Yeah, cool. Now we're going to get into some of the fun of EC2. I'm actually going to skip spot instances right now, but there are different. The cloud is so interesting because it gives you because it's on demand. It gives you a lot of flexibility in what you can do. It also gives you, because of that flexibility, it is a little daunting to get up to speed and really understand what you're using and how to use it properly. But once you do learn, it has huge payoffs. You can save yourself a ton of money. You can make things more reliable. You can make things faster. You can make things a lot easier. So they have a couple options here. They have things called reserved instances. They have things called spot instances. We're going to talk about those after we get past this. Just wanted to talk about it while we were here, but I don't want to dive deep into it yet. The next thing is going to be your networks. We're going to leave everything default right now. You can set up networks accordingly. Again, if you don't know anything about networking, don't mess with those. The defaults are fine. They're fine. This one's interesting. So auto assign public IP address. So if this is disabled, you can spin up servers that do not have public IP addresses. What does that mean? It means that they are networked within Amazon. They're accessible inside of Amazon's networking, but you cannot get to them from the outside by default. Why would you want to do something like that? You would very often want to do something like that when you are working. Systems for enterprises, for companies, they don't need to be accessible from the outside. There are ways to get in. There are things called jump boxes, jump hosts. There are a lot of things. There are VPNs and things like that. But you don't always want these things exposed to the world, and you can use this to set that up. But you would need a way to get into Amazon's network to be able to log into it. But we're going to leave that enabled by default. But you do have that option available to you. Don't worry about placement group. Don't worry about capacity reservations. Keep an eye on this IAM role thing, because we're gonna talk about IAM a lot tonight, but we're not gonna do anything with it right now. Leave everything default for all of this. Keep that simple. So next, we're adding in all the resources for a computer to be able to run. So now we're going to add storage. So this is going to be storage is that hard drive. It's the persistent storage. It's the data that's going to stick around, well after we leave. If we shut the computer off, it's going to remain. So you get this root volume by default. I can add in, lots and lots of different storage things. I can add more drives if I need them. Again, you have to pay for all this stuff. It's cheap, relatively, but yes, you have to pay for whatever you use. So here we get up to, let you know, the free tier. Eligible customers get 30 gigs of EBS general purpose SSD or magnetic storage for free. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make this 30 because that's how much we get for free for this. Cool. And so there are storage options. We're not talking about those now, but there are different volume types. They're good for different things. General purpose is what you're going to get out of the box, and you should be good to go there. And then encryption type, you can encrypt it if you want. We're not going to do any of that. Again, leave it default. You can change this to whatever number you want. It's 8 by default. You can go up to 30 if you like. All right, tags. Tags are a way to set some metadata for this. The fun of the cloud and like the reason people love the cloud so much, the reason DevOps kind of is a thing, the reason why like automation is so heavily focused upon is because you can programmatically work with all of these things. And these tags allow you to do some interesting things through that automation. So again, you can add tags. They're basically just key value stores. So again, things like name, and we can call this Mastermind Cloud 1. Simple. You can call it whatever you want. Yeah. So next thing, security group. Leave this. You can leave this as is. Security group is a firewall that Amazon provides. Basically, a firewall that Amazon provides for your server. So it will automatically block connections that you haven't explicitly allowed. So by default, the only connection that it allows is SSH. So again, Amazon tries to be as security focused as possible, and we'll talk about the shared responsibility model in a little bit. But it by default, almost everything in Amazon is explicit is denied by default. You're not allowed to do it by default until you explicitly give access to it. You'll learn about more of that when we get to IAM in a little bit. But yeah, this is your security group by default. You can get through port 22. What is port 22? SSH. What does SSH do? It's secure shell. It allows you to log in to a computer, a remote Linux machine. So you can create a new one. You could already use one that already exists, but I'll allow it to create a new one. So we'll do that. And then it gives you a little overview and says, hey, I want to make sure you know what's going on. I want to make sure you know what was set up. And then you can go ahead and everything looks good. You click launch. We talked about SSH keys here. Go ahead and either create one if you need to create one and download it, or just use one that you already had. And it looks like I need to create one because again, this is not my main account. So I'm going to create a new key pair, and we'll call this just cloud. And we'll download that key pair. We'll put it in. We have an AWS keys directory. We'll call it cloud. And it downloaded it and we launched our instance. So just like that, we were able to go through and specify all of the resources that we needed, the way that we wanted our server to be set up. And Amazon goes ahead and it now is provisioning that for us. It's giving us, IP addresses. It's giving us, it's installing, it's booting off of a base image, it's setting up our keys and things like that, which is great. So that was cool. But why was this so revolutionary? Why is this so revolutionary? Why do people love this so much? It's because before this, if you needed a server like this, you would have to, you have to do one of two things. If you actually needed a server, and let's say your company was out of capacity, you would have to spend lots of money on a pretty beefy computer, thousands of dollars. It would come in. It would take a while to come in, take a couple weeks. It would get delivered to your door. You would have to pull it out of the box, you would have to find some rack to install it on, and you put it in the rack. You got to run wires to it, switches, everything. You got to run wires to it. Then you got to hit the little CD-ROM drive, and you got to put a Ubuntu CD in there. You stick that in there. Someone's got to plug in a VGA cable in there, get your monitor, get your keyboard. You got to manually install Linux on it. You got to set it up how you need it to be set up. You got to network it. You got to do all this. You got to do a bunch of stuff just to get it online. And now we were able to just do this in a click of a button. And you don't need to be some special systems person to do it. You can click through and install a quick installer, and you can set this thing up very, very, very easily, which is nice. We no longer have to wait. It is immediate. So it's actually already up. It's just it takes the status checks a little while to get up there. But yeah, we already have ourselves a single EC2 instance that we called Cloud. Just that fast. So we've done that before, but I just wanted to run through that again for anyone who hasn't seen that. We're going to dive way more deep into EC2. Does anyone have any questions about what we've done so far? The purpose of EC2. I don't know. Does anyone have any questions so far about EC2? There's so much more to know about EC2, but does anyone have any questions? Let's see. Level of expertise, would you say someone we need to learn and follow? That's what you think. So I think you'll be able to follow what I'm doing. No problem. I think you'll be able to see me click around and go through and do this stuff yourself. The context around what it means is there are definitely levels, and that's why we kind of start with Linux first, and web traffic management and stuff like that. We're trying to build from the beginning. If you're starting fresh, you can do !YouTube, and there's a playlist with all the things that we've already covered that you can go through. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a level of there's a bunch of layers of this. Last time, what surprised me is something I just never thought about is there are people who knew how to program, who already had programming, who wanted to get into DevOps, who were already almost like they were almost in the industry just off of programming alone. But then we got to this section, and the reason I added in all the resources tabs is people were like, oh, I actually have no idea what RAM is on a computer. I know how to use a computer, but I have no idea what RAM is. I have no idea what the CPU does or is, which I thought was interesting. So again, there are definitely layers to it. Took your advice from past video and decided to get my AWS CSA associate. That was a tough exam. Yeah. Congratulations, first off. That's great. Yes, it is. Yes. That's awesome. It should definitely open up new opportunities. Again, people are really looking for people who know AWS. And I think that, if you continue the learning process of just kind of figuring out how you can use these services to solve problems, it will help. It'll definitely help a lot. All right, I'll get a little bit of water and let's run down all the options we have, because again, this is why another reason why Amazon is so confusing. In this one service, we have tons of options, we have tons of information, and we're gonna go to another service and you're gonna see that it looks nothing like this at all. So it's really, really interesting. I think also what's interesting sometimes is I think it's easy, once you get comfortable with something, once you're comfortable with the cloud, it's easy to forget how much stuff is in here and how much you really have learned and how much, I don't remember the process of learning all this stuff, but when I'm looking down the list, I'm like, damn, there's a lot of information here. So it can be daunting, but trust me, it comes pretty quick. Ladies of the party, what is EC2? What's up, Esco? Welcome. EC2 is Elastic Compute Cloud. It is it is Amazon's virtual machine that you can rent. You can rent a virtual machine from Amazon. It's a little bit different than that, and we're gonna talk about why this specifically is in compute in a second, once we go down this list. But yes, essentially it is a server that you can rent from Amazon. Would you recommend getting another AWS associate level cert? That's a good question. After getting the solutions architect associate, I think if you have the SA, I don't think the developer one is that valuable for you at all. The sysops one can be a bit tough because I think it kind of relies on like you having done like sysadmin work before, which is interesting. Some of that stuff I think is hard to learn. They can't like some of that stuff they can't quite teach you, which is interesting. I honestly would study. I would actually start studying for the Solutions Architect Pro. Not with it will be tough to just go get the Pro, but I think the process of studying for it will help you a lot. I don't think it hurts to get another cloud provider cert either. If the goal is to get a job, I would probably grab more AWS certs if the goal is to get a job, just because I think people seeing that focus in one area might help a little bit more. But yeah, it's not easy to. Someone asked that it's not easy to land a DevOps job. I think we talked about it in the very beginning too. There's kind of no JV for DevOps, again, because it's a discipline that was built again off the experiences of its practitioners, and so yeah, I mean it is tough to hop right into a DevOps role, very difficult. But there are a lot of DevOps adjacent roles. Again, you can hop into systems administration, you can hop into being a developer, you can hop into QA, you can hop into things that are touching these things, and you can start picking up the skills to move into it, for sure. Even if someone gave you even if you went through this course, didn't have any experience before this, and you finished it, and you're able to get through an interview and talk about all the stuff, because I do think you'll be able to speak about this stuff when you're done with this. I think you would do yourself a disservice to be put in a job like that. I think it would just be overwhelming, just because there's so many layers. There's so many layers of this stuff. We are barely touching each of these things, which is tough. That's why I actually think I'm going to make this course longer next time. I think I'm going to make it a more complete course. Not just an intro to DevOps, more of a full scope DevOps course. And it might have to be 20 weeks, to be honest. I know it sounds crazy, but it might need to be 20 weeks. Sure. Let's see. Another one would be easy. I do think becoming a DevOps engineer is easier for developers. Why do I think it's easier for developers? I think it's easier for developers because, one, you already have, even though you may have not done the stuff manually, you have an understanding of how these things kind of work. And you're not going to be in the console. Well, you will be, but you're actually going to be managing these things. What people pay you for is to manage these things programmatically through code, through configuration. And I think that I think it's easier for developers to kind of think through some of these problems, these interesting infrastructure problems, than when you come from a systems background, just because this works so differently than how you did things before. It's very interesting, but I find that developers are great DevOps engineers. Developers who come to DevOps from a development background usually I find them to be pretty impressive, to be honest. Okay, let's I'll answer some more of these questions in a second. Let's keep moving a little bit because there's a lot of stuff here. All right, so on the left here are all of your options. EC2 dashboard, this is where we are now. Yours actually might not look like this. Again, it says new here. The old dashboard was a bit different. You usually can go back to the old dashboard, but this is fine. Shows me how many are running and shows me some information about some other options that I have. We're not gonna go through all this stuff. Instance types is cool. All right, so let's talk about some of these reserved hosts, dedicated hosts, and things like this. So we said this thing is a virtual machine. So that means that there's a host machine. There's one big server, a server with tons of resources, one server, and it's split up basically. A hypervisor is installed on it, and it's split up so that multiple people can be on this thing. So your server is not alone. Your EC2 instance is not on its own machine. There are other people's servers running on the same machine that yours is running off of. One of the issues that you used to have with traditional hosting like this is you would basically this is still partly true. But Amazon has done a lot to mitigate this. But the other servers, the other virtual machines that were running on the same machine yours was, they could be parasitic to your server. So a system has a limited amount of those resources, a limited amount of memory, a limited amount of CPU, things like that. And if someone was able to burst or use more than resources than they had allocated, it would kind of eat into the other machine's resources. Again, Amazon has done a ton to mitigate this. So not something you'll see, which is super nice. But you have these different options here. So you can have a dedicated host. So you can say, hey, I don't want my stuff running where everyone else's stuff is running. I want my own host here. Or yes, I want my own host. It probably works different under the hood, but I want my own host instance. So you can do that if you need to do it. I've actually never seen this done. I'm sure some government agencies and things have to do stuff like that, but I don't need to do. I don't need to do that. Toggle your looks. Oh, okay. There we go. Interesting. Old, new. All right, I'll put it back to new. That's fine. I'll get used to it because I know I'm gonna have to get used to it when they change it anyway. But yes, that is that. There's also things like spot instances, and there's something called reserved instances. So these instances are on demand. So I can spin up an instance whenever I want. We're gonna talk about regions and availability zones and stuff, but so right now, the server that I spun up is in the Northern Virginia data center. So Amazon has data centers around the world. And again, even though they have tons of capacity, when you spin things up, like you use up some of that capacity, and it is possible. It is like, I've never seen it happen, but it is possible that you go to ask for something because it's on demand and Amazon not have any space for you. And so that it can be a concern, or not have any space for you in the place that you want it, or with the right configuration that you want. It's possible. Again, like I said, never seen it happen, but it is possible. Reserved instances allow you to basically say, hey, I know I don't need this on demand. I know that I'm going to need a certain amount of EC2 instances. I know I'm going to need this thing for this amount of time, and they will allow you to prepay for it or pay a lower fee. There's some payment options you have in there, but it's cheaper to say, hey, I'm declaring upfront that I know for the next year of this project, we're going to need 2 of these servers of this size. And so you can pay a cheaper price to get exactly that. So that's what a reserved instance is. Again, it reserves your space. It reserves that area for you. Spot instances. Spot instances are an interesting thing. These are not good instances for permanent things. Most of the time you kind of bid on these things. And so when there are, the price on them actually fluctuates pretty drastically and pretty dramatically, actually. That's why they have this pricing history button, so you can see what things cost at a current time, things like that, 3 months. Oh, interesting. I wonder if maybe this is just for me. Yeah, so you can see here the cost changes, but you can basically say, hey, if the cost of a spot instance goes below this value, go ahead and give me a number of these so I can use them to do some type of processing. Again, we're paying for processing units, so people will need to use these instances to process a lot of data. So if you could throw more servers at it, you could possibly do that much faster. So yeah, what's up, C Hernandez 27? Welcome, thank you for the follow. So yeah, not important right now. It is very important. It's better there's a lot of questions on the exams about stuff like this, but you can use these tools. You can use things like reserved instances and spot requests to save your company a lot of money. Again, because like I said, this is cheaper. Spot requests can be very cheap depending on what it is that you're doing. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about, we have Elastic Block Store here. So let's talk about, this is actually, it's really its own service, which is interesting. They don't list it as its own service, I don't think. I don't think EBS is in the storage category. It is not. But okay, so the reason why EC2 instances are in the compute sector, even though they have all types of resources connected to them, is what you are really paying for is the CPU, the amount of virtual CPUs you get, and RAM, to be 100% honest. That can actually be separated from the storage. So yeah, you're mostly paying for storage, but like it's kind of separate. and they can be separated. So you can actually, the storage that's attached to them, you can separate them and you can move them around to another EC2 instances. So this is where your CPU and your RAM is, and the storage is actually something separate from them. And all of the networking stuff is virtualized as well. So it's very interesting. And so usually people like to think about this as like a virtual machine. I think it's a good way to think about it in the beginning, but then you need to deconstruct that and realize that, yeah, EC2 instances are not actually like virtual machines. They mimic them, but they kind of operate in a much more interesting way, and things that you can do. So the storage that backs them, this persistent storage, is called EBS, or Elastic Block Store, and these are volumes. What's great about these is every time you spin up a new one, it'll give you this volume, and I can use this volume as I wish. This is basically it's just a hard drive, a system drive, basically. You can create snapshots of it, so you can create backups, which is really, really nice. Again, you can detach a volume, so I can move this from this instance and move it over to another instance if I need to. And there are a lot of options you have here, but yeah, this is the storage that backs an EC2 instance, and that is really good to know. You have your options here for networking and security, so your security groups, elastic IPs. So what you don't know yet is this stuff is on demand. So the way that these things can operate, actually, let's go down to load balancers, and then we'll talk about why elastic IPs matter, because there's more than one reason. You got your key pairs here, network interfaces. There's a bunch of networking options. Again, that you'll learn through practice and learn through doing, follow some tutorials, and you'll start to pick up these different things. Security groups is the one that I want you to memorize right now, or like to be most familiar with. And again, that's your firewall that allows you to, allow data, allow different protocols, allow different IP addresses, things like that, or block them. So that's your first kind of line of defense here. Well, second really, but first line of defense as part of EC2. But load balancing, this is what's interesting. We set up load balancers with Nginx. You can get that same functionality right out of the box much easier. Load balancers are very important in Amazon. Load balancers set up this little service. You can easily create a load balancer. So instead of doing what we did, you can easily go in here and click this and call this MM Cloud and Internet Facing IPv4. It'll be over port 80. Don't worry about availability zones right now. You can leave it default. Give it a tag, one subnet. I'll do 1B and 1C. And you can do security. I don't really want to do that right now. I'm just clicking through really fast, but you basically can run through and you can create a load balancers. Again, all the work that we did with Nginx, you can do it very simple here. I'm actually not going to create it because don't actually create one. I think you have to pay for provision load balancers, I believe. I don't know. So you create that, and then you create these pools that they go to. So remember, we had things going to server 1, server 2, server 3. You can create the pool that those things go to that sit behind these load balancers. So because of this, servers and services inside of Amazon can be easily scaled up and down. So when people talk about the cloud and scaling and elasticity and things like that, what allows that, or allows that to be effective, load balancers are the main thing that allows it to be effective. There's more to it than that. But let's say I am now getting a bunch of requests. Let's say everyone right now is going to mastermind.io because somebody super famous hosted me or something like that. And everyone's going there. And I need more server space. You can't just go in and say, hey, I need a bigger server, because then you have to set it up, also other stuff, route traffic to it. You can spin up another thing into this pool. You can put it right in this target group, and traffic can now start flowing to that next server, so that now you have some increased capacity. So it's really nice. It's super duper nice. And that's also why you would have something like elastic IPs, or why you could. So load balancing isn't, well, because servers are brought up and down in Amazon, like they're not this they don't have to be this permanent thing. If you want them to be, they can be this permanent thing. You can absolutely spin up a server and keep it online for however long you want to keep it online for. But anything could happen. A bunch of stuff could happen. And when if that server was to go down and come back up, it would actually get, you may not lose any data because you have your Elastic Block Store, everything saved on that, on the storage, because again, that storage is separate. But the EC2 instance that comes up next is going to have different information, different IP addresses, all internal and external, things like that. What Elastic IPs allow you to do is to basically give your instance a dedicated IP address. So they cost money. I think they're $1 per month per IP address. So you can create an Elastic IP address, and this will allocate an IP address to you that you can attach to an EC2 instance, so that it has basically a permanent server. So if you have this server that you always want to be able to log into from your computer and you shut it down all the time and things like that, this might be something you would want to use so that you can always know where to go. So those are cool. Security groups and Elastic IPs are pretty cool. And again, auto scaling is where you can set up the scaling events that I was talking about. So I could say, hey, once the CPU on my servers, once it's, the threshold is at 80% for 5 minutes, go ahead and give me another server. And so it automatically knows what to do. And it says, all right, I'm basically gonna take your server now and I'm gonna make a copy of it. I'm gonna put it in the load balancer target group, and I'm gonna start, passing traffic to it. And then you can say, hey, if my stuff is still pegged for even longer, give me another server. And maybe now, instead of scaling out, I want to scale up, and I want to have a larger server. So now I had a micro server, but my CPU has been pegged for 10 minutes. Go ahead and give me a medium server now. And so you can use that to automatically give yourself more capacity, so it can automatically scale up and down. Again, this is something that used to be very, very difficult to do. Basically, you got what you got. You provisioned a server, you ordered it. You'd have to decide capacity at the time of purchase. I had to say, hey, I think that next year I'm gonna be able to push my traffic to this much. I'm gonna make a bet. I'm gonna make a gamble, and I'm gonna order this server, hoping that it has enough capacity. Hopefully it would work. Hopefully it wouldn't. Hopefully it would work. Maybe it wouldn't. But this allows you to no longer have to over provision. So over provisioning is very costly. Like, you wouldn't want to hop into Amazon and spin up an expensive server just because you're keeping your CPU and your memory down at the 10% mark. Like, that's not good. You're wasting money. Actually, you want your server to be utilized because it will save you money. You want it to be heavily utilized. You want to provision properly. You want to size things right, but you want to be able to respond to traffic spikes. You want to be able to respond to increased traffic. You want to make sure your customers get a seamless experience. And launch configurations, auto scaling groups allow you to do that. This is why the original flock to the cloud was so interesting. This is why people really liked it in the beginning. It's like, oh man, like, I can instantly add resources to my pool without anyone knowing, and without intervention. Like, this is something you can set up and you do not have to touch it. There's some interesting caveats to when not only can it scale up, it can actually scale back down. So if it gives you 10 servers for a certain amount of time, 10 extra servers, it can slowly start to remove those things as your traffic dies down. So pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting what EC2 can do. And again, it can do a lot of things. And I highly, highly recommend that you hop in here and you mess around and you start learning. So again, this is a Linux instance. So you guys already know that we can log into this thing. So let's go ahead and get logged into ours really quick, just for fun. And that key that you downloaded, we learned the anatomy of an SSH command. But I'm gonna go to where that key is that I downloaded. So you can head over to the key that you downloaded. Mine is in AWS keys. All right, and mine is cloud.pim here. We know we ran into this problem before, so to save time, you must give this permissions that are appropriate for a secure file like this. So we're gonna change the permissions here. So you can see here first, this was what were the numbers? See if you can add it up in your head. R is worth 4, W is worth 2, so 6. 4.4 is what this was originally. I changed it to 4.0.0. So now if we look at this again, we see that there's only an R here for the 4. So let's go ahead and log in. So SSH command, SSH-I. And again, with Amazon, you have to do it this way. You have to use an SSH key. So give it the identity file that you want to use. The -I is for identity file. You pass in your SSH key. The user for Ubuntu server is Ubuntu. Again, this is part that's very confusing. If you spun up an Amazon Linux machine or a Red Hat or something like that, your user, the other main user is EC2 user instead of Ubuntu for pretty much everything else. And I think for CentOS and Red Hat, it used to be root, but now I think it's EC2 user as well. But for Ubuntu, it is Ubuntu. And paste that in. And let's go ahead and hop into our server. But pretty great. It lets us know that, you know, that we've logged into a new server. Oops. And then I could do some updates or whatever. It lets us know this message of the day, shows us our internal IP address, etc., which is super duper nice. So we have our server here. Now, let's talk about how you would interact with this. I said you can interact with this in 2 ways. Through the console, we can spin this up, but you can also interact with these things with all Amazon services in a different way. Amazon is the cloud. All cloud providers. It's very interesting. They're all basically just software. They're basically just APIs, which is a way for you to get data from a system, basically for one application to speak to another application. But it's basically a layer of software over top a bunch of computers. That's like all the cloud is. It's actually not this fancy thing. It's some software that's written to like that just sits over top of some infrastructure, some real hard tangible infrastructure that allows you to manipulate and to manage it in certain ways. So because of that, we can interact with this. We can do everything that we do here. We can actually do programmatically. There is something called the AWS CLI. So the AWS command line interface. Now, this actually is a pain to install. Well, it's not a pain to install. If you already have Python installed, it's good, but there is AWS CLI 2. So they released a new executable. Basically, it's in beta, but it works really well. I'm gonna give you the link in a second. But it's great because you no longer need to install any dependencies. It comes with everything you need, and all you do is unpack it, basically, which is super nice. So I'll pass this over to you all. I'll pass over to you. You can use that later to get it installed. Don't get it installed right now. I'm actually not. I already have it installed, but you need to know a little bit about IAM before you can set it up properly. So we'll get there. I just want to tell you about it because we're about to go into IAM. But you can get all the information about your server, IP addresses, all kinds of stuff you can get from using that. So you don't, if you're having trouble knowing how to do things through the console, you can't interact with all of this stuff in a different way through the CLI, which will be done through your terminal here, which is pretty interesting. Another thing I want to show you before we hop into IAM about EC2 specifically is actually, you can see here if I do a DF, you can see here that like I have a 30 gig volume. It says 28 gigs here. When you format a hard drive to be used, it eats up you know a small amount of space. This is for every hard drive. So this is basically my 30 gig drive that we installed. I think the first drive will always be given to you at /dev/xvda1 by default. But yes, this is it. It says I already have 1.1 gig used. Again, that is the installation of the underlying AMI. But it also gives us the size here. That's nice. Gives us the full size right here. I forgot that DF did that. And besides that, there is so again, remember I said basically AWS, these cloud providers are just big pieces of software over top of infrastructure. These EC2 instances actually have an IP address that you can hit that gives you information from them as well. So when you want to do things programmatically, there's some times when a server starts up that you need to get certain information about it so that you can set up some of your services, resources, and things like that. EC2 metadata IP. I always forget the it's like two. I always forget the was it 69.254? There's an IP address you can hit. Pretty sure it's 69.254.69. No. What is this? Does anyone know offhand? This is bad. Amazon AWS EC2 IP. What am I looking for? I'm looking for instance metadata 169. I was close. Is it? Yeah, I feel like you use it. It's funny because you memorize it for the exam, and then you memorize it for the exam, and then when you need to get to it later, it's already in all of our. You use it once, you set it up in as like variables and stuff inside of your automation, and then you never have to remember it again, which is interesting. But 169.254. 169.254. And I think I can. So basically, this is just this is an IP endpoint that I can use to get information about these things live from the server. So AWS is networked actually in a very interesting way. What's up, David Borland? Welcome to the stream. Thank you for the follow. But it's set up in a very interesting way. There are internal IP addresses that are walled off, basically, or reserved for special things. There's a bunch of stuff internally that's done to allow you to be able to do this stuff in a pretty amazing way. Yeah, and so I could use this, and I could grab I can curl information about this. I think it's 1.0, and then metadata. So basically, you can make a web request. It's a web request that you can make to get all this stuff. So instance ID. All right, so I could use this information. So it spits out the instance ID here. So look, it ends in C202. If we go back to here, you can see here that the instance ID is C202. So again, there's you don't know anything about APIs, you don't know anything about JSON yet, but all this is just information that's passed around that you can gain access to, that you can use to make requests to Amazon. The same requests that they're making, like when you click on these buttons to launch instances and you put in all that information and you hit like confirm, launch that instance, it's basically making a request to itself, to its own APIs. It's making a programmatic request for that information to happen. And you can do that manually yourself. You don't have to rely on them to do that. There are easy ways for you to do that as well. But that's all we're gonna cover about EC2 tonight. So I recommend everyone grab an account, grab a free tier server, so that T2 micro, set up a server, give yourself 30 gigs of disk space and play around with it. Learn how to log in via SSH keys. You watched me do it a few times. Google it. Say, I don't understand this SSH key thing. See if you can find out more information. Do it yourself. Try to get in there. Start messing around. Find out about, I forgot what this IP address is called. People post it. Save it. Start to learn about EC2 and the things that you can do with it. Yeah. Maybe one other big thing is these EC2 instances have something called, well, it's less of a cloud thing, but they have these things called user data. And this is like, there's basically scripts that can run on this every time it spins up. You can build those into your AMIs, which is interesting. And that is usually when you would use something like this. Maybe we're setting up Nginx in a certain way, and to be able to do things properly, we need, you know, the local IPv4 address or something like that. That is when you would want to grab something like that, or maybe you have an application that runs and dynamically grabs information about your server. That is why you would use something like this. That's when you would use something like this. Cool. All right, I'm sure there's a tons of questions. Again, we're just scratching the surface of all this stuff. So I know people have tons of questions. So let's see what you got. Ask me questions before we get into IAM, because IAM is a whole different ballgame. It's way left field from what we're doing right now. Let's see. I've been dabbling in Linux for years, just don't have as much opportunity to use it. Would love to work full time in Linux. Yeah. That's fair. I think one of the interesting things that I did for me, which helped a lot, was when I'm not telling you to do this. I'm saying it. Think about it. It could be an option, but diving into using Linux full time as my own desktop machine. I actually did that in college, I think it was Ubuntu 8.10 or something like that. It was a while ago. I guess it would have been 8.10, 8.04, 8.10. I use it as my main machine, and I learned Linux really well because I ran into so many damn problems. Linux has come a long way. You would probably be fine now, to be honest. But I couldn't. At the time, Google Docs wasn't so great. The whole Google suite of things wasn't quite as good. So, I didn't have access to do I had to use LibreOffice for Microsoft Word, and people would pass me documents and the formatting would break everything and I would struggle. Super duper annoying. But nowadays it might help. You'll learn a lot when you do it, and might be a good thing. But if you're looking for an opportunity to use it more and more, that may be your chance. Do you know how to read man pages? Okay, that's a good question for Ari Winokur. Man pages, it's an art to be able to read them. Oh, also, if you're looking for an easier man page, there is this TLDR package, TLDR man pages. TLDR, for anyone who's not a Reddit user, stands for too long didn't read. So there's a common thing for someone puts a long post in and no one wants to read it. They put a TLDR, but TLDR is an easier, simpler man page thing. So it has almost everything, but the output is much simpler, and kind of tells you exactly what you need. So TLDR might be useful for a lot of people, but I would recommend trying to get good at comfortable reading regular man pages because they are important. Beginning, this seems like incredible knowledge. Yeah, Zero's Theory. We're just diving into the cloud again. I'm trying to teach as much as I can about the cloud in 4 parts, which is you can't actually get that deep, which is frustrating. And again, that's why I'm probably gonna have to extend. I really want to extend this course, and make it more than just an intro, but it'll be long. It'll be at least 20 weeks. Maybe we'll double it. Maybe we'll make it a 24-week one. It'll be daunting. Maybe it'll be fun. Or maybe we'll just do. Maybe we'll just do a next level, advanced one. I don't know. We'll figure it out. What do you show cloud computing? Yeah, we're just getting introduced to the different pieces of Amazon Web Services right now. I haven't been able to break into a Linux job yet. Yeah. I will say, I don't know. Logging into servers and knowing a ton of Linux is getting less and less important. But I watch almost daily. I watch people struggle with you try to create a Docker file. We're gonna get into containers. The containers are all the rage. Everything is containerized now. And I've seen people be amazing at understanding Kubernetes and containers and how they work and everything, but have such trouble setting up certain things in a container just because their Linux isn't strong, which is so interesting. But yeah, there'll definitely be opportunity. Load balancer does not make your code more efficient or free from bugs. Absolutely, it just means that people can more reliably get to your buggy code. Wikipedia's reserved IP addresses. Oh, nice. Good link there. I would use Linux on the desktop but I have a Mac. Fair. So you don't need. So if you have a Mac, there's no like start using your terminal. It's Unix. Like start using your terminal to do more management of your computer. Start defaulting to the terminal to do things. I think that's fine. And yes, you can run Linux on a Mac. Absolutely. Can you give a quick example of what you would use this for? EC2? Yes. So EC2 is simply a server. So let's say you wanted to host a website. Let's say maybe I had a WordPress website and I needed a place to host that. You can't host. So you could host. You could use your computer and you could create your website and you could give people your current IP address, but then you would have to just leave it up and it would have to stay there. A web server is just a computer. It's someone else's computer. It's a remote computer that you would use to do any type of computing that you want to do. So some people use them, again, most commonly is probably to host websites. Other people use them to process things. So maybe your organization has a job that runs at night that downloads some information from one client and it processes it, it makes changes, it crunches all the information in there and it shoves it into another system. You could use EC2 compute to do that as well. But it's just another system that you can utilize, another remote system that you can utilize to do things. Again, web server is a very, very common one. I like the idea of two course levels. Yeah, I like that. I definitely like that. That's cool. I'll probably put out a poll to see what people want to do. All right. Would the 20-week course be shorter if you could assign homework? No, so we can assign homework. If you subscribe, you get access to Google Classroom. The problem is I was going to give more assignments, but I can't check the assignments. So I didn't want people to like be working on things. Like there's definitely some like, hey, try this thing out in there, but there's not a lot of like actual assignments to turn in because again, I don't have the bandwidth to check it. But yeah, if you do subscribe, you will have access to that. You can join the Discord and get access to that Google Classroom. I do not think it will be shorter though. I don't think it would make it shorter at all. All right, let's get into IAM because IAM is very, very important. So all these 3-letter acronyms, again, EC2, Elastic Compute Cloud, and so IAM. This one is like, you can get jobs just for knowing IAM, which is very interesting. Well, it's deeper than that, but like mainly knowing IAM yeah. So IAM is identity and access management. So we all know that security is all the rage right now. And identity and access management is how you authorize and allow access to things, not just people. So it's more than just people logging into your AWS account. It's more than just people being able to access certain services. It is also, it's users and groups being able to use certain services and not even use them. It's use them in what way. You can get very granular here. So I can say, hey, I only want, maybe I hire someone new and his name is Bob. And I'm saying, hey, Bob doesn't know much of anything. So all Bob has is, for EC2 instances, all Bob can do is create them. He can't do anything else to them, can't delete them, he can only create them. He can't describe them, he can't do all, there's a bunch of options here. You can use AWS's documentation. Their documentation is pretty bad, actually. There's a lot of it. It's not good. It's not particularly good, but you can get super granular in what people can do. And this is why IAM is so great and so, I'm trying to look for the right word. It's great. It's really good. But it can be a very daunting thing. Like it's very finicky to deal with because of, again, that amount of granularity. Generally, you have to give, you almost have to give access to every single thing you want to happen manually, very explicitly, which is interesting. Ignore all this. This is for anyone who knows Amazon. These are all bad things. My this is for people who missed the beginning. This is not my main AWS account. This was one I could get into. My other one, I left my phone in the car, and I cannot. My two-factor authentication, I couldn't log in. But so this is bad. But again, this is where you manage all those things: users, groups, roles. We'll talk about roles in a second, policies and things like that. So users, very simple. Right now, I'm logged in as the root user, which is bad. You generally don't want to generally don't even want to use a root account like this. But basically you can add a user here. And so I can add a new user, and we'll call this mastermind.stream. You can call it whatever you want. I call it mastermind stream, whatever. And then you can give them two different access things. So they can access the console. So that's where we are now. We can access the console. But then we can give people programmatic access. Remember, we talked about programmatic access, you being able to use different ways to access this besides the console, to make requests, to talk to their APIs. Programmatic access will allow this. So I'm gonna say, hey, I'm gonna give this user both types of access, which is nice. Do that. Password, auto-generate password, that's fine. I'm gonna delete this user anyway. Create a password. What's up, Reckless INT? Welcome. Thank you for the follow. All right, permissions. So permissions again are this is IAM. This is what IAM is good for. This is giving people permissions to certain things. So copy permissions from where? I thought it should give me some other options. Fine, I can create some permissions in a second. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna create. This user has no permissions. Why did it go away? Why did everything go away? Previous, auto-generated, cancel. Then again, why did it? That's weird. I wonder if I got into a funky state. Should give me some options to add permissions. We'll see what's going on. Both access. All right, cool. Add user. We can create a group. We can attach existing policies. You can also do. So I'll create a group. This will be fun. Administrator access. We'll give this person admin access. Cool. Oh yes, this went away first. We'll give them admin access. So you can get, again, granular. They give you a bunch of these by default, like to use. They give you a bunch of different permission sets. So if you only want someone to have access to, Elastic file system, just to the EFS, you can do this. And you can see here, you can read, and you can list and write. There's a bunch of options that you have here. We'll give this user administrator access for now. And give it a tag if you want, review, and create a user. Now, when you create a user, a couple different things happen. I'm going to download the CSV. But when you do that, this screen right here is very important if you do this manually, because this is the only time you'll be able to see these things. So you need to download that CSV, but you have this access key ID here. And you have a secret access key. So these two things in tandem are going to be used to access AWS programmatically. Remember that AWS CLI thing I told you about? We'll use that to do some cool stuff in a second. You can also email the instructions to the person. And then you have your password to log in. Again, you can download that CSV so that you have it, so that you can use them for later. So I'm gonna close this. And now there's another user, there's a user here, part of no groups, but this is actually an administrator user because I gave them that. So if I click in here, you can, IAM is where you can, manage users and groups. So I can add more permissions. I can, change their security credentials, remove their security credentials. Again, things like MFA, like the multi-factor authentication, that's where I could set it up right here, which is super nice. But there's a lot of options here. You can see there's a bunch of options, and this can be confusing. Like, it can be very confusing because there's just so many things you could do. But again, that is just simply how you manage your users and how you give them access to certain services. These permissions are how you give them access to certain services. And these permissions are using policies. So you see policies down here. And you can create policies that say, I can say, right now, if I wanted to allow all of you into my AWS account, I could create a policy called stream user. And I could give it access to a certain amount of things, maybe read-only access to just about everything. And then I could assign that policy to all of your permissions, and that's how I would manage that. And I could add things to the policy, add you all to the same group, whatever. There's a bunch of ways to do that. Now, we said that is user access inside of Amazon, but what about so there are roles, and so roles are also for users, but they're also for AWS services speaking to other AWS services. So roles, they're for users, but they're for users that are in another account. So basically, if you have your own AWS account, I could allow that user, I could allow that user to assume a role in my account. And so this is actually a very interesting paradigm, because this is actually I think this is the preferred security method of the current day. And actually we implemented this on our project now. But basically nowadays for organizations, larger organizations, you would have, instead of setting up an account like this and giving everyone access to it, you would create basically a central account to manage the users, like a user management account basically, and you kind of have everyone set up there, but none of your services would be there. They will basically just be there to give people access to worry about these IAM settings and things like that. And then you would have other accounts where your applications and code is running, and you have your services all set up over here to the left. And these roles, you would assign a role to a user that's in this other account, and everyone that's in this account who had the right role could basically assume another role in this other account where everything's running. And that way things are a little less, a little less messy. You don't have to manage people in multiple places, and it kind of gives you a little bit of security. It's an interesting way of doing things, but there's a lot of ways to do this. What's up, Rojo JP? Welcome. Thank you for the follow. But yeah, IAM roles are very interesting, and they're pretty cool. But again, they're mainly used for setting up access from one service to another. So I could set up a role for EC2 instances that could speak to a certain database or a certain S3 bucket. We haven't learned about those yet, but yeah, you have to set up access in between services. They can't just talk to each other by default or have access to each other by default. You got to set that up using roles. Yes. And so like there are, when you click into a new role, you can choose the use case. So I can say, hey, allows EC2 instances to call AWS services on your behalf. So we have an EC2 instance. So let's go ahead and choose this one, and let's set up some permissions. Right now, we don't have anything else, but let's say we wanted it to talk to a database. Wanted to be able to speak to a database. So read-only access, we only want it to be able to speak to a database, things like this. So if I were to give it like RDS full access, you can click into these to see what it can do. And it tells you what access it has to certain things. So this CloudWatch can read and write to all resources, and EC2 can list all resources. Pretty interesting. It's tough to read those things. It takes time to kind of understand how those things are set up. The more and more you play, you understand that. But then there's this JSON tab here. So you don't know what JSON is yet, but it stands for JavaScript object notation, basically. And JavaScript is a format. It's a data structure, data format for the web, for JavaScript. Other things can use it as well, or handle it and read it. But it's a bunch of key value stores, and so. When we say things, we can manage things programmatically. We can, because Amazon is really just a giant API that speaks to itself. You speak to this API using this object notation. You can write these rules. You can write these policies, these permissions, just in JSON and pass it to AWS as well. So I can. Up front, that might seem super complicated. You're like, that's like daunting, but it gets pretty simple to do once you kind of understand how things are set up. yeah, it gets pretty interesting. And this is what people start to pay you for, to be able to use, like, write things like this, to automate, to be able to set up, to be able to configure Amazon using code, really. And we're talking about infrastructure as code later. But yeah, you can go ahead and change it here, or you can change it over here if you wanted. But we can create a policy real quick that has RDS read access, role name, mastermind RDS, just whatever we want to call it. Great role. Now that we have this role here, let's go back to EC2 really quick. And let's take a look at the instance that we set up, Mastermind Cloud 1. And if we scroll down, there's a bunch of information here. This information takes a long time to parse and to figure out what is what. It's really annoying, but it is good information, and you will learn how to ignore most of it and find what you need. But in here, I should have, I don't know where it is because this changes up. IAM role. We talked about roles. There is no IAM role attached. You can absolutely attach IAM role. So I can say instance settings, attach or replace IAM role, and I can go ahead and add in that role that we just created. And so operation was successful. And if I scroll back down, I can see here that I now have the IAM role Mastermind RDS. So if I was using the RDS service, so RDS is a service, it's a relational database service. It's for databases. So if I had a database now, by default, this instance wouldn't have been able to connect to it or interact with the RDS service itself. But because I've added this now, I could actually probably log into this server and do like some type of, actually, do these come with AWS CLI installed by default? Maybe Amazon Linux does, but probably not these. Cool, no biggie. That might've been cool to show. Maybe I'll show that in a second. Yeah. So back to IAM for a second. First thing to remember that this is where you manage your, this is where you manage users and access for people and for services. And again, you can also do multi-account things. You can allow other people from different accounts access, but this is where you manage access for people and for AWS services themselves. And there's a lot of stuff in here. Remember, users are your users. Groups are just like groups in Linux. You can create a group that you can manage and add everyone you want to that group. So I could create like a developers group, or again, like I said, I can create like a streamer, a mastermind stream group. And then I can manage the policies just on that group rather than having to do it to each individual person. So it just gives you a little bit of help when you're managing stuff like this. Policies are what allow certain access. This is where you declare what has access to what. We're not going to talk about identity providers right now at all, or any of this other stuff. We're going to keep it just that simple. Now, let me show you what this access does. So we have this new user, and I will stop showing this for a second as well, only because I don't want one of you who types fast. This person has this user I have has administrative access. So all their information is in these credentials.csv, credential CSV. And when I open it up, it's going to show everything. And I don't want people to be able to log in right now, since this is not a secured account right now. So I'm going to close that for a bit, give you guys a little bit of inception there on my main computer and cover up my face a bit. I'm going to open it up on my computer, and actually, before I send this below, display caption, let's put this back. Let's open up the command line interface real quick. So if you installed, did I install AWS 2? I did not. If you install the AWS CLI, again, this is something that you can do yourself. Once you do, oh, actually, no, I do need to install it because that's interesting. Oh, never mind. Never mind. I don't need to install it. I was on the server still. I type in AWS 2. Do I have it? Okay, I don't have it. Cool. So this is good. So it's not set up. So when you type in AWS, you should see this stuff before you get some stuff set up. Remember, I said if you wanted programmatic access, you needed to use that secret key and that access key. So the way that you use those is you type in AWS configure. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to paste in so I actually do have an account set up, but this must be old. Oh, actually I didn't do anything with it. Let me see what's set up. S3. Cool. This is an old key anyway. I need to update this key anyway, and it's from my other account. What's up, J Warbucks? Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the stream. So you type in that AWS configure, and then you basically type in or copy and paste in what was given to you by Amazon. So open up that credentials file that was sent to you, and paste those things in. So I'm gonna do that off camera real quick. Okay, I really need like a privacy, little privacy thing, a little opaque. Or a little translucent. That's what I want, where you can kind of see through it. I don't know. Privacy screen for that. I have a lot of stuff on here. So let me paste this stuff in real quick. Where did it go? Oh, it's up one. And it is here. So you go ahead and paste in that access key ID for the first option. And you paste in that secret key secret access key in the second one. Copy, paste it. And then it's going to ask you for a region. I'm not going to show it because you can still see my keys. But region, you can just hit enter. But the default is you're probably going to want whichever one is closest to you. We haven't talked about regions yet, but mine is US East 1. I'm on the East Coast. Northern Virginia is where US East 1 is. So that's the one that's closest to me. So I type in US-East-1. If you're on the West Coast, you can type in US West-1, wherever you set up that server. But you can also just hit enter for now. And it'll still work out fine, not knowing what it is. You can update it later. All right, so got that done. Let's go ahead and clear this screen and let's show our screen again. We can get back to the screen. All right. So once you have that stuff entered, you can now do, if you do AWS help, it'll give you a bunch of options here on what you can do. It's very hard to know what to do here, but you can basically use this CLI to call a bunch of services. So we know EC2 is one that we learned today. So let's look and see if EC2 is an option. Yes, it is an option. Same thing for like IAM, it's an option here. So you can use this to programmatically manage and access information. So I can do AWS EC2, and let's do a help to see what options we have when we type in AWS EC2. You can see here I have, a lot of stuff: accept reserved instance exchange quote, allocate address, allocate host, associate address, assign private IP address, associate root table, attach volume. I have all kinds of stuff here. So it looks like I can do all the management of EC2 through here rather than clicking through the console. So I can do things like get information. Unfortunately, none of these tell you what you need to do or exactly what they do, which is kind of annoying. You kind of got to figure it out. Or, just Google around, like, hey, how do I get information about my EC2 instance? For most services in Amazon, the way that you get information is you describe it. So I do AWS EC2 describe. Actually, what is it? I think it's what describe instances. Actually, we don't actually manage EC2 by default. Maybe I can make that a little more pretty. Do I have JQ installed on here? Oops. Shift JQ. I do. Okay. So then I get this JSON. Remember, I would write down JSON. If you have no idea what JSON is, it took me a while to understand the worth of JSON, but I get all this information back. And what this actually is this is all the information in JSON format about the EC2 instances that I have that I have in my account right now, or at least in this region of my account. So let's know I have this instance. It's a T2 micro. The key name that I used was cloud. We can see, remember that instance ID is here. It lets me know where it is. So there's a bunch of information here about it. Everything that I would need to know about my instance is all right here. Again, there's a lot of information here, but I was able to access it pretty quickly like this. When you can access information like this, this is how you can automate so much of it. Because I can also use data like this to create instances. So I could actually do like an EC2 help. So this JSON that we have here, I could actually take this, fill in new information if I wanted. This is not how I would do it right now, but I could actually create an instance. I could create an instance like this, and I could pass in basically some JSON that has specific information about it, and it would go ahead and it would give me a server like that. And I'm not gonna do that right now because I don't want you to necessarily know to do it that way. We're gonna get to more things that are gonna help out with that, and I don't necessarily want you to spend a lot of time doing that just because I don't think it's important. And again, you can do all kinds of stuff. There's describe instances, there's describe images. Also, you see me typing in this JQ dot thing. If you're trying to copy what I'm doing, you don't need to do that part. That is JQ is it's a JSON like parser, or like it makes it easy to manage JSON data. It's an extra application. Don't sweat it. I do think it's helpful. I think it helps when you're doing stuff with JSON, specifically like what we're doing now. So I would go ahead and check it out and try to install it, but you don't need it. EC2 describe, is it just image? But mess around with some of these commands. I wouldn't worry about breaking. So you can definitely break stuff, but I wouldn't sweat it. I wouldn't sweat it. I would mess around, see what you can do. Google some of the best commands you can use. Again, you can stop instances, start instances. So maybe you have a script. Maybe you would set up a simple bash script that said, I know that I'm going to be working on my instances. I'm going to be trying to learn every day between the hours of 4 and 6. And if I forget to shut down my instance, maybe I want to set up a script on my computer that automatically runs at 10 p.m. and says, hey, if my instance is still up, go ahead and shut it down. And so you can write a little bash script. Again, there are other options for this, to go ahead and pass in, a command like this to stop your instance. So I think it'll be like AWS EC2, like stop instance. And then you would pass in information to determine which instance you want to stop, and it will stop your instance. So again, you can use the AWS CLI to interact with Amazon in the same way that you would from the console, which is really great and allows for a lot of stuff, but it takes a lot to get up to speed with it. To get comfortable with this, there's like, you're not going to for the most part, you're not going to memorize. There's no need to memorize commands and stuff from here. You will pick them up as you need to perform tasks, as you need to, manage a service, as you need to create a service from the command line. You'll pick up the thing. You'll learn how to find the answer you need. You'll learn how to use the tool properly. But it'll come. That part will come. Don't spend a bunch of time doing that. What's up, Coding Garden? Welcome all the Coding Garden people. Awesome. I appreciate you being here. We are 47 people. That's a lot of people. What are we up to now? This might be, you might have me at my biggest numbers so far. Also, we are nearing the end, but actually we're going to do some more tonight just because DevOps night is pretty good. But cool. Welcome all Coding Garden members. Everyone check out, I think we've rated Coding Garden a bunch of times. And definitely check out Coding Garden, run through problems. It was interesting because we usually rate Coding Garden after our Python ones. So maybe some of you from the DevOps channel have not seen Coding Garden. But check them out. It works on a lot of different things, does some stuff, solves some cool problems. I think last time I was on, we were doing some coding katas and stuff, which is pretty dope. Thank you everyone who is following. I can't keep up. my thing's not keeping up, so I'm sorry that I'm not giving you shout outs. I'll try to keep up with that afterwards. Welcome. We're doing some DevOps stuff. We're just getting into the cloud tonight, getting into cloud computing with AWS, Amazon Web Services. And we're just learning right now, specifically, we're learning about IAM, which is Identity and Access Management. And we're also learning about how you can programmatically interact with Amazon Web Services. What's up, Daniel Garden? How you can programmatically interact with Amazon. And that's what we just did now. We basically spun up some resources in the cloud. So if you're not familiar with the cloud, we spun up a resource in the cloud. Then we used IAM, we used Identity and Access Management to create a user who was then able to see the images, see the information or access the information that exists here. So we're actually gonna go back into IAM right now. And I'm gonna show you what happens if I remove that administrator access. So this mastermind user has administrator access, but what if I don't want them to have, or myself to have administrator access? I can remove it and detach that policy and leave change password on here. But now what happens if I try to do this describe instances thing again? I get an error occurred, unauthorized operation. So again, it's your first line of defense. It's super important to understand how to manage those users, manage those resources. Again, to me, it is one of the most annoying parts of Amazon. I can't tell you how many times my team has been working on some things and we're like running through setting up a brand new feature that's using some new services. We spun up, some kind of new pipeline of some new event driven architecture. And the reason why something's not working right is because we gave access to the right service. So maybe we did give EC2 access to RDS, but we didn't give it the perfect granular option. So what I didn't show you is, let's add a permission. Let's go to something like EC2. And you may have seen it when I hopped in there for a second, but look here. This is small. So for things like the auto scaling action, it's available for all resources, but take a look at, I thought there was gonna be more options here. Each of these services has like different things. Like this action for IAM, this is Identity Access Manager, create service linked role. That's one thing it can do, but there are a giant list of other things that it can do. And so you can get that granular. Like right now they're doing a catch-all for all of the resources with a star, but you can get super duper granular. So star is not good if you don't want it to be star. Like you should not give more access than is needed. Your goal should be to only allow the access that's needed. That's how you keep your things secure. That's how you can be confident that that things aren't doing things willy-nilly. Another reason you want that is because these services, like I know people who've given their EC2 instances like full access over like RDS. Now, if you do that, sounds great. It's like, oh, I want it to be able to connect to the database. All great. If someone were to break into that EC2 instance somehow, they would be able to actually spin up other RDS instances. RDS instances are not cheap. Relational database service instances are not cheap. They'll be able to delete your instances from there, all kinds of stuff. So you don't want people to be able to do things that they shouldn't be able to do, or services to do things that they should not be able to do. So let's get some permissions back. Let's go ahead and get administrator access back up in here. What's up, MK Window? Welcome. Thank you for the follow. So we'll put administrator access back in here and let's mess around with the command line just a bit more. So now I can do just about everything. EC2 is the only thing that we've done, I think. Let's do IAM. So this is how you can get the information that you need. You can use this help. You can use the help command to get like your next set of commands, or you can just use the documentation that AWS has. So AWS CLI documentation, maybe I'll paste this in here. documentation. Yeah, principal lease permissions is critical. Absolutely. Again, that's what we were just talking about. I don't know why. I know that's what it's called. Yeah, that's called, everything I was just talking about is the principle of lease permissions, and it is very critical. You don't want someone to get a hold of your account, mine Bitcoin, and leave you with a massive bill, because it absolutely can happen. That's why that's why I didn't want you guys to see me putting in my access keys and things like that, because if someone were to, because this user has administrative access right now, at least, you'll be able to do a lot of things. You could actually lock me out of my own account pretty easily. Yeah, and I wouldn't be able to go and do things. There's a lot of stuff you can do, which is super annoying sometimes to deal with. We'll go on the documentation here. Is my zoom less than 100? No, it's just small. CLI reference. This is generally what you want to go to. This is exactly what we want. So instead of having to use, I think this is your best option here. So I'm going to send this over. For finding out what you need to do from the CLI, and I think I'd highly recommend you just mess around with the CLI, see if you can get certain information. Spin up an EC2 instance, spin up some other services, and see if you can get information. So I could type in like EC2 in here, and it will search. Maybe this isn't where I want to go to. I thought this was where. Oh wait. Oh yeah, this is what I want. CLI latest. This is actually what you want here, not latest reference. All right, so in here is basically your man page. It's basically your manual for using the AWS CLI. You got things here, again, like Cloud9. You have all these services here, all these different things you can do. EC2 is what we're using. What's up? What was that? Thong NV? I like it. Welcome. Thank you for the follow. But here's where you can find your available commands. So just like in the man page or with the help command, you can find all these things, and you can click on them to see what they do and how to use them properly. So things like, actually, let's go to IAM. Let's see what options we have in IAM, since we're doing some stuff with IAM. All right, so in here, I got a lot of stuff. So it looks like you can change a password if you want, attach a role, attach a policy, create roles. So let's take a look at just like list things. So list users. Let's go ahead and list the users that we have in here, and you can go down and you can see how to use it and like what other options you have, which is nice. So I can set, like, if I have a lot of users, I can only get back a certain amount if I want. Yeah, and I can change you can change your output from JSON to something else if you'd like. But yeah, and it'll explain each of the options below. Again, just like any other type of documentation, like any other type of tool, it takes time to understand how to like use this properly. But let's go ahead and they have some examples here. Let's go ahead and let's do this. Let's paste it in. IAM list users. And look at that, we get some information about our user, Mastermind Stream, which was the one that I created, Amazon user ID. So I have a user ID here that we can use to identify me. And then we have this thing called an ARN. You will see this a lot in Amazon when you are dealing with Amazon things programmatically. The ARN is super important. This is short for Amazon Resource Name. So everything that you spin up, every resource that you create inside of Amazon will get an ARN, an Amazon Resource Name. It'll basically be broken down like this, like ARN, AWS, the service that you're using. So an EC2 instance, the ARN would be like ARN AWS EC2 instead of IAM. It'll have an ID here. This is your account ID actually. So this will be the same, I think, for everything that is in my system. And then each ARN is broken down differently, and this one is a user, mastermind.stream. And it looks like you get some information on when it was created. And again, this is in JSON format. Yeah, it's in JSON format. It's it takes a little while to start to understand, to look at this and be able to use it properly. But JSON works really well for getting data and be able to grab what you need, and use that data and process data. JSON's a really good format for all that. You can get it back in some other formats as well. Let me see, AWS, CLI, format options, format output. I think you have a couple things like a table, and you can get it in YAML. Okay. So this is something that I've always been looking for in DevOps. We're learning DevOps right now. There's so many people, especially developers, who will say all DevOps people do is like, you're a YAML wrangler. You just write YAML. You just writing YAML templates all day, and they're not wrong. YAML is a superset of JSON. So YAML is a way of also formatting data. It's a data structure. It's a structure of data so that it can be parsed easily and understood by an application. I think that everything that can read YAML can read JSON, but not vice versa, pretty sure. And YAML is easier to read and write for you and me. And I can show you an example of what that looks like. Let's take a look at some YAML really quick, because again, YAML is something that you will be writing very, very often. And I can show you actual like work YAML, because this is open source. This is actually an open source package. So that config. So we use a tool called Circle CI, and most of the build tools nowadays, you use YAML to be able to set those things up. But this is what YAML looks like. Again, like JSON, it's a bunch of key value stores, but you can see here, it's not as crazy as the JSON because it doesn't have all the curly braces and the brackets. But again, it is a way of formatting your data. It's a data structure, really. And a lot of programs, a lot of things use it to they leverage YAML or JSON to be able to do different things. Generally, we have someone, Andrew Lane says he prefers JSON. Generally, JSON is things you pass to a machine, or you have a machine generate JSON, but YAML is the data structure that people write. That's kind of what it's turned into. So like, yeah, like if anyone ever passes me JSON, I'm like, if someone passes me JSON and it could have been written in YAML, then I will say, hey, I don't like this, and I will convert it to YAML if I can. TOML++, I like TOML. So I actually think YAML is a superset of JSON, actually. I believe. Maybe not, though. Maybe it is a subset. I thought it was a superset. YAML is a horrendous format. It's not, though. It's not when JSON is the preferred thing. So actually, look at this. So Amazon actually has something called CloudFormation, which makes it easy for you to and again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. This is a part of the infrastructure as code piece, but basically you write YAML or you write JSON to describe with Amazon the things that you want, the resources that you want, and you pass to Amazon and they basically deliver it to you. But let's take a look at this really quick. AWS CloudFormation EC2. If you look at any of the pages, they usually give you a little excerpt. What's up, JS and MTR? What's up, Caliber1? Thank you for the follow. Welcome. But they generally give you syntax for both JSON, which you can see here, JSON, and YAML. And generally, I find like this one's not so bad because everything's on the same level. But YAML is the preferred option. Never go work anywhere if they say they do their CloudFormation, they write their CloudFormation in JSON. Doesn't make any sense at all. We'll go back after that. Should we try writing a parser for it? We could write a parser for it for sure. YAML may seem simple and obvious when glancing at a basic example, but it turns out it's not. YAML spec is but again, people, when it's people writing these things, the numbers I don't think the numbers matter as much when it's a people problem. It is not. It is easier to for most people. It's easier for most people to write YAML than it is for them to write JSON. I can't tell you how I would be like at this point in my life, I would be fine if I needed to write something configuration in JSON. I would have no problems with it. But most people are going to have a problem with it. More so than YAML. YAML's pretty simple. You're going to mess up your YAML a lot. Like YAML's also easy to mess up, but for sure. But yeah, JSON isn't a YAML alternative. Tomo, it is not a clear YAML alternative, but for DevOps sake, for every DevOps tool that I can think of that uses YAML as its language of choice, JSON is absolutely an alternative. You can almost write. I actually can't think of one where you could not submit JSON as opposed to YAML to do it. I wouldn't do it. It's not a people alternative, but it is an alternative. But I do use Toml for a lot of stuff, especially for like Go and and Hugo and stuff has picked up Toml as their main configuration item. But so I do use Toml when I can. Most DevOps roles use YAML to interact with them. Yep, Ansible, Docker, CloudFormation, absolutely. It's the base of every DevOps tool. Like YAML is like you got to get familiar with it. It's very important, but you don't need to know it yet. So back in IAM, do we have any other things? It sucks. It sucks because there's so many IAM concepts that I want everyone to know, but a lot of them are too deep, and they wouldn't make any sense teaching them to you now because there's no context behind them. But what you really need to remember about it is that it's used to manage access, both by people and by services, between services inside of Amazon or between users in other accounts. And you can use roles as well to set up the permissions between services and people in other accounts, not for people in this account. That's what policies. That's what these policies are for. And then that people can access these people. Users can access Amazon in two different ways. One is through the console. The other one is programmatically. So that's through it's not even just through this AWS CLI. So yes, I have CLI access, but I also could write a program. Let's say I wanted to write a little Go program that, checked for new S3 buckets and did something cool with them. There are Amazon SDKs. So these are software developer kits for different languages that allow you also to interact with Amazon in the same way that your CLI does. So there's more than just one way to do that. It's not just through the CLI. It is also through like this. They have them for a bunch of languages. They have it for Go. They have it for Ruby. They have it for C++, Go, Java, JavaScript, .NET, Node.js, PHP, Python, and Ruby. You can use these things to interact with AWS, and you have to give the systems or the users that are running these things access to Amazon. You have to explicitly give them access. So that's pretty important to learn. Rust using Toml, Rust is life. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to be hopping into Rust soon. You guys know I'm a Golang person, but I can't. I dove into Rust just a bit, and I like Rust because Rust doesn't have I've heard there's an interesting article out right now about why Discord actually switched from Go to Rust. They switched their whole service layer, messaging layer from Go to Rust. And there's a pretty interesting arguments on there about they were using a pretty old version of Go, but I think Rust, learning how to program with a lower level language like Rust or C++. I never learned C. I never I need to learn C. I didn't start out writing software. I've done a little bit of C++. I actually have done a little bit of C++, but not much. But I think I really want to dive into Rust. I think it'll make me a better programmer. And I think Rust and Go are going to be the two things that I focus on. As a DevOps engineer, you're probably always, or at least most of the places I've been at, have been a lot of web-based stuff. So kind of always messing around with JavaScript and Node and stuff. But yeah, so it'll absolutely make you a better programmer. Yeah, that's why I want to learn it. So I knew Python first. And then when I learned Go, like Go made me so much, like it was the first, I had started to learn Java in school, but I never spent any time after like getting good at Java. I never got good at Java. Actually, I don't remember any Java, but when I started diving to Go, I don't know, like instantly when I started using it for things, I feel like I instantly became a better programmer, and I feel like Rust is going to do the same thing for me. So I'm definitely going to be, that might be like a second half of the year thing, just diving into Rust. But yeah, I think I would prefer Go for most things, but I want to be able to write Rust, and I want to find some good use cases. I want to build some cool stuff with Rust, that just, where performance really matters, really matters. So these things are available to you. I'm surprised they don't have Rust on here, to be honest. Actually, no, I'm not. But yeah, and there's command line tools and things like that. So if you're someone who uses PowerShell, you can get a CLI that's in PowerShell. There's tools inside of PowerShell that allow for this. There's also some EC2 tools. There's a bunch of different options you have for interacting programmatically with AWS. Again, I keep saying programmatically, that's what it's called, but that is an automated fashion in a programming way, I guess, mind frame, to be able to access this stuff. So you can do it that way as well. And that is how you're going to want to do it. It's when you get good, not even when you get good, as you're learning new tools, as you're diving into something new, you should start to understand how to access that service programmatically. What's up, Jay Sega? Welcome to the channel. Thank you for the follow. And all right, I think that's all we're going to be able to do tonight. So, tangible takeaways. What are we taking away from tonight? One, that you know the cloud is just someone else's computer, that all it is a networked set of computers, networked set of distributed networked set of resources, and that it's a on-demand kind of pay for what you use model where you can on-demand access resources. You also need to know that we learned about the different cloud providers. So we learned that AWS is by far the largest cloud provider in terms of market share. They made a ridiculous amount of money last year. The report came out not that long ago, made a stupid amount of money. But we learned about the different cloud providers. We learned about AWS. We learned about Azure, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. Those are the three biggest ones. I would check those out. Hit their websites, search around, see why people like one more than the other. Say, just type in like, which cloud should I use, and then just read some of the articles so you can find out like the differences and what's good and what's bad about them. Like read articles like this. I don't know if that one's good or not, but just start to just do some research and get more familiar with this stuff. We also learned about some of the specific Amazon services. We learned that there are different service categories, or that there are things that cater to certain resources. So we learned about the resources as well. We learned about CPU and memory, or RAM, hard drive, or disk space. We learned about disks. And there's other things, there's network, a bunch of other stuff. But we learned that the service categories that Amazon has, they have almost 200 services, 176 services that they cater to one of those categories for compute or for databases or for machine learning, or there's a bunch of services in there that Amazon has. How can you see those things? You can hop into the console and you can just click services and you can see the different categories we have here, the things for security and analytics and all kinds of stuff that you have in here. That's great. We learned about EC2. We learned about, we dove into our first service. We learned about two services tonight, EC2 being one, EC2 being the Elastic Compute Cloud. And that is your virtual machine. Essentially, you can think about it like a virtual machine. It is your server that is renting a full server from Amazon. Again, a full server being an entire computer that has the compute resources, that has RAM, that has disk space, and is networked, and with an operating system on it and everything. That is what EC2 basically is. But we also learned that EC2 is interesting because you can break apart some of those services. We learned about EBS, which is Elastic Block Storage. This is the storage that EC2 uses. We learned that you can actually detach EC2 instances from the Elastic Block Storage. You can move those around. So they're two kind of independent things that that Amazon uses in tandem to provide you the EC2 service. And then we also learned about IAM. So we learned about identity and access management a bit. We dove into it. We know that's where we can create users and groups and policies to give users and services access to different things. We learned about roles, which you can give to services and to outside accounts, IAM users, to be able to provide them access to certain things. We learned about the rule of least privilege. So we want to through IAM, we want to give different services only the things that they need to do their job. So if I have something that is just simply moving data from one place to another, I don't want to allow it to have full access to another service. I want it to only have maybe write access to a certain service if it's pushing data there. And so we want to be cognizant of that. All these concepts are much larger, but they're things that you should dive into, I think, very high level. If you can grasp onto the rundown that we just ran down in just a minute or two, these are great things to talk about in an interview. These are things that will be asked about in an interview. And just, having that high level knowledge of these concepts really, really helps out. And that's really what I want you to learn throughout this cloud portion. There's no way that we can learn, in 2 weeks how to use all these services. But again, we want to learn what the goal that these things serve. Like, you want to know that, hey, if I need to manage, who has access to my AWS account, or, the permissions between services, I know that there's this service called IAM, which can do it. I also know that really I could use, what's interesting about EC2 is because it's just a server, because it's just a computer, you could actually use EC2 to basically, if you wanted to manually set it up, you could probably use an EC2 instance to do literally everything that is on this list. I don't want to say literally everything, but most of the things here, like, again, these are relational database services and stuff. Because EC2 is just a virtual machine, it's just a computer, you can install whatever applications you want on them and run them there. Absolutely, you can install a database on there. You can install, Elasticache. You can install all these different things. You can store files on there. You can set it up to be some type of Elastic file server if you needed it to be. It would be kind of weird with their networking, but yeah, it's just a big server. It's just a big computer that you can do whatever you want with. Or it can be big and small for the free tier. But yeah, and I hope as we get to other things, like, you just learn what problem they solve. We're gonna get to storage, and we're gonna talk about S3, and again, these are all storage, but why are there so many different types of storage? They all serve different purposes. This is an object store as opposed to, a block storage device like EFS. We'll dive into all that and why it's important. But those are the high level concepts that I'm hoping you take away from this, rather than, granular, like, oh no, I didn't see how to set up that EC2 instance. I have no idea what the instant types are. Not important. Understand what they do first. You can always, if you understand what problem it solves, you can always find the answer to the little things, like, what is an A1 instance? I actually have no idea what an A1 instance is. So let's look. AWS was an A1 instance, sure. A1 instance. Are the first EC2 instances powered by AWS Graviton processors that feature 64-bit ARM. Now, I know what this means, but I could also see, if you're new to computing, this will be complicated. But ARM is a different processor type than the x86 and 64-bit ones that we use now. Well, 64-bit ARM is generally been for smaller mobile devices, smaller things. I forgot. Actually don't know the specifics of what is different about ARM. I just know they're traditionally used in lower power compute machines. Other devices besides personal computers is what ARM has traditionally been used for. And I also know there's been a big push to make ARM more mainstream, but that is what you get here. So I know the architecture of these is different, and so if you need ARM for anything, this is what you would want to use. So that's how you find that information out. That's how you find that information out. Also, Graviton's Amazon's own chip. Yeah, so someone said Graviton processor, Amazon's own chip. Amazon has done a ton of, they've they've developed a surprising amount of software and hardware to make this, what AWS is, feasible. Until you see, like, you haven't yet seen the power of AWS. So like, I'm sure, Twitch is an Amazon company. It was purchased by Amazon. I'm pretty sure they're using Amazon services for their backend. But if you could see the rate in which these services scale up and scale down and provision and deprovision and allocate resources and move things around, you would like, it's very, very impressive. And to do that properly, Amazon had to make strides, both in hardware and software. A very interesting thing is I was always trying to figure out how, like, AWS managed their serverless stuff in Kubernetes, and how they kind of sped up the way that things are built. And Amazon has created this like super fast micro VM called Firecracker, which is very, very interesting. Lightweight virtualization for serverless computing. And I always wonder, we're gonna get to serverless. We're gonna do our 4th session is actually the only like deeper dive. Like, we're gonna be hands-on with serverless the whole time. And the only reason we're gonna be hands-on with serverless specifically is because I think there is there's interesting use cases for serverless in the way that it's going. And I also think it's the hardest concept to understand out of all, most things that we're talking about. EC2 instances and things like that. Like, yeah, you may not understand it right now, but like, I think that'll be the one that it'll be most applicable. Like, you can spin up an EC2 instance, you can install WordPress on it, you can we've done stuff with it. Like, finding a reason to use serverless is tough if you're not thinking in terms of serverless. So as we're doing a whole thing on serverless. But yeah, their Firecracker VM is pretty cool. It's actually open source. You can actually grab it off of GitHub. But yeah, they just created a bunch of cool stuff. Now, I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that we could use that they've created internally that they're not releasing to us, which would really help out the world. But their business, really annoying. How to watch your previous videos is awesome. Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, they're all up on YouTube. You can do pound YouTube. There's a DevOps bootcamp playlist. There's also a Python bootcamp playlist. So Mondays and Wednesdays are the Python bootcamp. It's introduction to coding with Python. And then this is the DevOps intro to DevOps one. This one moves a lot faster. Like, literally, we did almost everything that we're doing in the Python course. In here, we did it in Golang on the DevOps course, and we did it in 2 streams, maybe 3 streams. We did a programming one and then 2 Golang ones. So this one moves a lot faster, to be honest. It's a little more jarring, but yeah, it's because DevOps has a lot of stuff to it. So definitely go back and check those things out. This also runs a few times a year, and I do think we're going to try to do a more advanced one for, I think May is when the next iteration starts. I do think we're going to do this and take it to part 2 and actually apply this stuff. Maybe we won't even teach a structured course. We'll more so teach through a project. And so again, that kind of sucks because it's hard to do for the intro course if we talk through a project, because we would miss so many things. Like it would be weird to start off like setting something up, and now I got to teach you a bunch of stuff about Linux first so we can set some stuff up, and then like I got to teach you about this just so we can do this next piece. I think that'll work best now that, like, after you go through this and you have a base, even if you're not strong, it was just like you've seen this stuff before, you've seen it. So when I say stuff about it, you're like, all right, I don't really know what that does, but like I know it's a thing and I know it's involved with this. It'll help. So maybe we'll make part 2 straight through on a project, and we'll teach kind of through that. We'll see. We'll try some stuff out. Again, got to be agile about things. At the end of it, we'll do a retro, just like we're going to do with this. Week 12, we will do a retro to find out what we liked, what we hated, and what we can do next time to make it better. So that's that's basically everything. So what do I want you to do during this cloud portion? I want you to, if this is your first time touching this stuff, if you don't know what EC2 is, it's your first time learning about it, or you don't have much experience with EC2 or IAM, what I want you to do now is I want you to read about those things. You know, this is 2 services out of their 176. Read about them, watch a few videos online about them, get up to speed with those 2 services. You got 2 days to just learn as much as you can. You do not have to be an expert, but you'd be surprised at how fast you can get up to speed with them and go in here and play. Now, it's difficult sometimes to say just go play inside of AWS because AWS costs money, but one thing I will say is make sure you stay on the free tier of stuff. IAM does not cost you any money. EC2, as long as you stay on the free tier, you're fine for a long time. But Amazon's also, they make buku money off of this stuff, and they want people to learn this stuff. If you should happen to end up getting charged a bunch of money or money you weren't expecting, you can simply message Amazon support and let them know, hey, I was learning Amazon, I was learning AWS, and I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was on the free tier, and they will give you your money back, or if you didn't pay it, if it was just your bill, they will take it off. They're very kind. So it's not, I wouldn't stress too much out about it. When I was first learning, I actually went to a workshop or something, and I spun up a bunch of stuff, and I got my bill was like $600, and I messaged him, was like, hey, I don't know what happened. I don't have I'm not paying you $600. Why did I say that? I was just like, I don't know what happened. Like, can you guys do something about it? And they're like, cool, no problem. Like there's millions of stories out there about this. Yeah, you could. I mean, you could try it for free service. I mean, it would work. I don't know how many months you could do it for, but you could absolutely get some usage out of it. I've heard of a bunch of people doing it recently with trying out EKS, their Kubernetes service, because EKS, just to run the control plane, is like $150 like the month. And people will spin it up, learn it, and be like, oh, like I thought I destroyed it. Like I spun it up for a couple days or something like that. I thought I destroyed it, and they'll give you your money back. They're really good about that. There's also tons of ways to get free credits. That is something that I'm working on right now. So we might have to start some kind of social media campaign because they're not being as kind as I thought they were going to be. I'm looking for ways to get us credits so that everyone can get a certain amount of credits who comes through to just play, and so again, they're basically saying, hey, you have free tier that you can use, and I'm like, I understand that. I understand we have free tier, but I think credits would be really good for people, or at the very least, credits for either credits or some type of sandbox environment, which I could give people that will have like hundreds of IAM user accounts that could be utilized. I've seen that done before. I'm trying to work some stuff out. We'll see what happens. We're trying to do a lot right now. I think it'll be fun. Referral link for the credits. I'm not sure what you mean there, Andrew. Yeah, we'll see what they do. What is this? Ads. They're getting rich. Life hacker. Rich off of our clicks. But cool. That is a lot. I know it's a lot of information, and I know it's a lot of information, and I know how jarring it can be to be introduced to something and not have a lot of it explained to you. That's how all of these sections are going to be. But again, because cloud is a lot, now all you got to do is just go again, watch some videos, go check out EC2, go check out IAM. I'll only give you 2 tonight. You can see next time there's a bunch more, but we'll stay focused in a category. So we'll learn about storage so that your mind isn't all over the place. It's all storage stuff, all database concepts. We're not hitting everything in these. Then we'll learn about some networking and content delivery. And then we'll learn about like management of your account. What's up, Elegant Thestral? Welcome to the channel. Thank you for the follow. And then we'll finish up with a serverless lab. So again, what will all this do? This will give you enough to be able to speak about, I think this will give you enough to speak confidently about AWS, or give you enough of a broad enough knowledge base to have a conversation with people about AWS, conversation with employers, and give you enough information so that you can start to dive in yourself. And when you start to see like examples of things, you're not like, what is this? You have some context behind it. That's it for tonight. That's all I got. Let's see who's online for us to hit up. Gotta rate somebody. Who are we heading over to see? Does anyone have any questions? Actually, I'll give everyone some time. I have time. Does anyone have any questions about anything that we went over? You can literally ask whatever. And now that we have some free time, we can dive a little deeper. Appreciate Adam. Definitely have a great night. No problem. Not so blah. I think I can see that. Thanks for tuning in for this long. Thanks for checking it out. Thanks for tuning in. Be a part of the community. Let's see what we got here. Let's head over to, I actually don't know any of these people, which is fine. But in case anyone's in Python, it looks like Anthony writes code. Looks like he's doing some Python stuff. So anyone who's in the Python boot camps, that might be good for you because he's writing some Python, doing some open source programming. Also, for anyone who wants to follow the Python one, what we have coming up tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're finally going to get to functions, lambdas, and scope. So we're going to be learning about scope and functions, not packaging up code, but little reusable pieces of code and calling them, and lambdas, the anonymous functions, reusable code, scope. Scope's super important. We'll get there, and then we're going to be doing algorithms later on in the week. So cool. First time seeing, what's up, Mango Smoothie? Appreciate that. Welcome. Thanks. In a full stack boot camp for the LAMP stack. I started my career managing LAMP stacks. Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. I'll never forget the moment looking to get into AWS stuff. So this is exactly what I've been looking for. Awesome, great. Like I said, there's also there's a YouTube playlist with everything. I'll just keep putting it in here with everything that we've already done. So if you ever want to go back and look at any of the stuff for DevOps, you can. But we're just getting into the AWS stuff, so this should be good. If you missed it, you can rewatch it. It will go up on that YouTube playlist as well. But thanks everyone. Hey Manufacturer, thank you for the follow. Yeah, we're gonna hit up this Anthony Writes Code person. Never been over there, so if he says something crazy, if he's very offensive, I'm sorry. It is my problem, but not really my problem. So let's head over and let's say hi and hang out for a bit. If you have time, stay and learn something. If not, I will see everyone on, Tuesday? I always forget what day of the week it is. Everything's running together now. But cool, we'll count it down. Let's see who's in. We're going in 6 seconds. 5. Well, I'll give it a second. Let everyone get all in. And let's head over. Everyone have a great night. I will see you all later in the week. Maybe tomorrow, maybe on Tuesday. Have a good night.